much. The time is 4:10, and we're going to go ahead and call this special board meeting to order. We've continued to be on the leading edge of technology with Zoom, and so had made some changes. So thank you for bearing with us as we worked on some logistical things and got everyone set up. So we do have, before I move to the roll call, I will just share that we do have in attendance with us at least one of our new trustees, trustee-elects, who will be taking office in December, but we have Keisha and Zawi. How close did I come, Keisha? Okay.
Pretty close,
with us.
yeah, pretty good.
Okay. And then I don't know, do we have Erin McFerrin with us as well?
I believe so.
Okay. So
I actually saw her for a second, right? So we seem to have lost
That
her.
was a different, that wasn't.
No, it was
that wasn't
Erin. I saw Erin.
Okay. So
Yeah, I'm sure I did. Yeah.
Floating in the Zoom universe
yeah.
right now, and perhaps she'll be able to rejoin us. But I did invite both of them to participate as we get ready for the transition, as Ms. Durkee and I prepare to leave. So they will be participating. And with that, we're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do roll call. So if you'll join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you, everyone, for that. So we'll start with roll call. We'll start with our student trustee, Ms. Alas.
Here.
Ms. Durkee.
Here.
Ms. Mayo.
Here.
Ms. Mason.
Here.
And Ms. Cound.
Here.
All right, I'm here as well. So we are off and running. So the first item is public comment. So the public may address the board regarding any item within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education that is on this agenda. So this differs from a general meeting, so it has to be on this agenda. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes each, or a total of 30 minutes for all speakers, or the 3-minute limit may be shortened. If there are multiple speakers on any one subject, the public comment may be moved to the end of the meeting. We're not going to do that. Speakers are not allowed to yield their time. So Austin, I turn it over to you for our public comment, please.
Sounds good. Thank you, Board President Lawrence. So for our public comment, just as a reminder to everybody, we have two options. You can send an email to boardcomments@mdusd.org. Alternatively, you could pre-register and jump in to leave a real-time video and voice public comment here in this meeting. So for those who have registered, we have a list of names, and we have asked them in our instructions to put their name in the chat along with public comment request so that they can be called in order. So we do have a few that commented that already. So we'll go ahead and get started. So first, we're going to have Diego Harris, and just give me a second here.
And Austin, how many public speakers do we have at this point?
Right now, so far, 20 have registered. So
Okay.
depending on the timing, I might ask you for an extension on the 30-minute period.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Diego, we have you in. Your 3 minutes will begin at your first word.
Sorry about that. I need to unmute myself. We would just, I'd like to just have no background. Sorry, I didn't realize I thought I was just going to be putting my message into this chat. So sorry about that. We'd just like to thank the current Mount Diablo School Board for your support of our organization and our mission to support our Black students, families, faculty, and staff. As two members, Brian and Lawrence and Joanne Durkee, are departing from the board, we want to acknowledge you for your efforts and support of our Equity in Action, and also to congratulate and welcome the 2 members who've just been elected. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. It has been heard. Next, we
Thank
will
you.
move to Eric Clifton, who will be followed by Minnie Sudarsanam. First, Eric Clifton, just a moment. Okay, Eric, your time will begin at your first word.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Eric Clifton. And here's my comment. The most important need for everyone right now, for people, is to stay alive and survive. If you open up the schools in unsafe conditions, you're putting teachers, students, and families at risk of contracting COVID-19. It's not worth it. The district's health metrics won't keep us safe. Blacks, Latinos, Native Americans are 4 times more likely to be hospitalized due to COVID-19 than other groups. If you look at the data of all our cities and communities, it backs up that information. And if you open up schools, you know, it's that trend is going to continue. And, you know, I got to speak up for that. I don't want to see that happen. And, you know, I'm advocating for all the families, all the teachers, all the staff. I've been saying this for a long time. If one person contracts COVID-19 because the schools reopened without really strong health metrics, then we failed, all of us. You know, if one person gets sick, hospitalized, or dies, it's just an utter disaster, and utter failure. So, and then another thing I wanted to say is opening up after the holidays. Whew, I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, I'm not going to visit my family. I'm making a choice, but that's me. I think people are going to be visiting families, and I just think that, hey, January is too close to that time, and it's like not the right time. That would be really scary and dangerous. And, you know, I also want to say that distance learning is going very well, really well. I teach 3rd grade, and my students are making really good progress. They know the routines. The parents are happy. The students are happy and engaged. So it's going really well. And then the last thing I want to say is, you know, I've been studying up on teachers that have contracted the virus from opening up schools. And, you know, I've sent that to you guys, and it's a long list. So I'm not going to, you know, I could read from it, but really, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say it's a long list, and you see all the numbers blowing up all over the place. So,
My interruption, just 15 seconds remaining.
For sure. So, you know, keep us safe, make the right choice, and put those strongest metrics you can in there. Don't put our lives at risk. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. It has been heard. We'll move next to Minnie Sudarsanam, who will be followed by Ali Baker. First, Minnie.
Hello everyone. So I wanted to share my opinion that we should not open school, in the schools itself for the school year, but keep it as distance learning. There's just too much uncertainty about how the COVID-19 is spreading and what effects it has on those who get it. Short term, of course, we hear a lot about short term, but we don't know, even worse, what it is long term. Even though education is important, this pandemic should not be disregarded. It's not worth taking a chance with the health of people. Instead, we should just make the best out of the distance learning, though continue to look into ways of reaching out to students who are not attending, ways of reaching out to those who find it hard to engage in this environment, and ways to reach those who need the individual attention that is hard to give in distance learning. So my opinion is that we should accept that this year will be a unique year in the education of all, but it will include building new character in our students because they're going to have to cope with a different setup. And I'm, as a teacher, I'm still encouraging all my students to persist in learning. So that's my opinion.
Thank you for your public comment. It has been heard. We'll move next to Allie Baker, who will be followed by Mila Hall. First, Allie.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the time. Thank you to the board for setting this up. I know I've reached out to a number of you over the past few months. So thank you again for letting me speak here today. So I'm speaking on behalf of special education students. My son is in 4th grade at Silverwood Elementary. And in all of my emails, I've mentioned to you, distance learning certainly does not work for special education students. My son's been home since March and frankly has suffered a critical loss of educational and social skills under distance learning. This is a population of students who have individual special needs and a short attention span, which is simply not adaptable to distance learning. How do you teach fine motor and gross motor skills over Zoom? How can speech, which is just more than just talking, it's communication, be ascertained over a computer? LA County is open for this population, which is one of the largest, if not the largest counties in the entire state. Walnut Creek, which is right next door, is also open for this population, and several other districts in the state and the country have been open for this population. Why hasn't Mont Diablo? Their classroom sizes are inherently smaller. My son's class is 9 students total, and so it's much easier to make it a COVID-safe place for them to learn. What I do want to bring up today is that my son has an IEP, which is a legally binding document. I can tell you, sifting through this document this morning, that the district is not fulfilling their need or fulfilling their end of the IEP, which simply means that the district is in breach of this contract. I can't remember, Dr. Clark, you'd said on one meeting how many folks or how many students were on an IEP in the district, but I certainly know that it's all of the special education students, as well as some general education students that have specific speech, OT, and PT needs. I can only imagine, just looking at my own IEP for my son, that 100% of these IEPs are not being fulfilled by the district. So I would like to know, what is the plan? We have a date, hopefully a hard date, for general education to open up in January. I know that we are now back in the purple, so it's not possible to open up today, but when we do return to orange, what is the plan? What is the date? How are we preparing? Because every minute with these kids absolutely matters, so I would like to hear a plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. It has been heard. We'll move next to Mila Hall, who will be followed by Trisha Collins. First, Mila.
Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to speak as a data scientist and as an African American. 875. I want you to think about that number. Many of us have over 875 friends on social media platforms, and these are all people that we know personally. Well, the data shows that 1 in 875 African Americans in the nation have died of coronavirus. Now, this isn't just the people who have had coronavirus. This is 875 of all the African Americans in the United States. 1 of them has passed away. 1 in 925 Indigenous Americans has died. 1 in 1,274 Latino Americans has died. 1 in 1,325 Pacific Islanders. 1 in 1,625 white Americans has died, and 1 in 2,100 Asian Americans has died. It is likely that each of us in some way has been impacted by the death of a loved one or a friend who's had a parent pass away. And so I just want to highlight that the data that we are talking about, these numbers that we're talking about, are people, are connected to students, are connected to employees. Today in my classroom, I'm a data scientist, but I'm also a teacher. And today in my classroom, we had a virtual field trip, and we were able to learn about how people around the world are using data in order to make life better. And so what I ask is that before decisions are made, that we create the infrastructure that we need. So for example, what type of data dashboard will Mount Diablo have in order to communicate effectively with our community, all of those stakeholders who are involved? Also, how can we work with health department to have enough testing sites for our employees, families, and students? If you remember in the beginning when COVID first started, it was very difficult for some individuals to get tested. And sadly, sometimes this is impacted by socioeconomic background. Also, sometimes it's impacted by ethnicity and race in terms of access to healthcare. And so I think all of these things are incredibly important to focus on, and for us to work together with those other agencies who care about the community to be able to create infrastructure so that individuals can easily be tested, employees and families. And I also want to talk to you a little bit. I know that
Pardon my interruption, just 15 seconds remaining.
Thank you. So I want you to think about the grain. From what we've been hearing, you want to use the county level as a grain, and I think that you need to use the zip code level. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for your public comment. It has been heard. Next, we'll hear from Tricia Collins, who will be followed by Anita Johnson. First, Tricia.
Hi, can you hear me? Dear Board and Superintendent, I was really disheartened by the message that was presented at the last board meeting that no learning has happened in 106 days, and that the only way we can actually educate our students is by getting them back on campus. As an elementary school teacher in the district, I completely disagree in so many ways. My class this year is my most advanced class of all my second grade classes. The writing is the most detailed writing with excellent grammar and spelling that I've had for a class this early in the year. No one sits there saying that they can't think of anything. No one fools around or goes to the drinking fountain or the bathroom or wastes time. Everyone is actively engaged and loving it. As far as math, they have understood and progressed in Engage New York lessons much faster than any other class I've had in 11 years at this grade level. Their reading levels are going up by leaps and bounds, as well as they have access to hundreds, if not thousands of books on Epic that can be sorted by level. In our classrooms, they won't even be able to touch the books. This year has not been a waste of time in any way, shape, or form. There are a few reasons why I think it's actually going so well. One, there are fewer distractions. The kids are muted and not disturbed by their classmates or noises in the room. 2, everyone has a front row seat. No one is far away from me in the back. 3, I can see what everyone is doing at once, and they have my personal up-close attention if needed. But most importantly, the parents are involved with their children's education. They know what is going on and are engaged in their children's learning. So to throw all of this hard work away that I have developed with these students and to switch everything around so that we can simply be on a school campus does not make any sense, especially in the middle of a pandemic. And the notion that teachers have it easier this year is almost harmful. We teachers are working multiple times harder. We are creating our lessons from scratch. We have to turn every single assignment into a seesaw activity so that there's accountability to get the kids to do it. We're spending many more hours grading, and all of this stress of trying to bring everyone back into the classroom for a hybrid plan that is subpar.
Because our more affluent communities have low numbers of cases that are creating a safe average does not mean it is time to return. As an educator, I must stand up for and advocate for our most vulnerable students, those in our Title I communities. Equity means we need to wait until our Bay Point and Monument Corridor communities also have low numbers before we enact a plan to send students back to campus. Honestly, to want to do any different, I would have to ask what the motivation would be. Is it about what's convenient, or is it about what's best for our minority students? Also, I hope that all sides will take this time to sit down and truly work to get a plan and an MOU in place and have all of the parts ready to be executed before we return. I understand that both teams have other responsibilities, but this is of the utmost importance. We have the time right now to plan, unlike in the spring. And unlike in the summer, we can also choose to wait until we have everything in place for that plan to work before asking students and staff back onto campus. It is our responsibility to protect and make safe decisions for our most vulnerable students. We also need to take care of those dedicated educators who want and choose to work with our Title I students. They deserve to be able to work in a safe environment, knowing that a plan has been thoughtfully crafted so that they don't have to worry and so that they can continue to provide an excellent education for our neediest students. Again, now is the time for actions, not words. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. It has been heard. Next, we have Devin Jackson. Devin?
Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, and dear MDUSD board members, parents and guardians, students, and community members. On Tuesday, July 14th, 2020, MDUSD chose the 100% distance learning for the fall 2020. I agreed with the MDUSD school board and would like to prioritize, as we are still doing, distance learning for the rest of the 2020-2021 school year due to health and safety concerns as a result of COVID-19. As many people have said before me, learning is happening in distance learning. It is happening in my classroom and many of my colleagues' classroom. A major shift to a poorly planned hybrid model would disrupt learning for too many students. Nothing is worth reopening schools in unsafe conditions, if it means that students, educators, and community members will get sick. The district's insistence on using only county-wide community health metrics puts our most vulnerable students at risk. It is our responsibility as educators not to allow our students to be put in harm's way, especially those in most need of an advocate. We must demand that they be kept safe. Medea's proposed reopening criteria based on community-based health metrics and are designed to keep everyone safe. Every child, every school, every community. Before reopening begins, these metrics must be met for each of the 8 communities in our district. In addition to basing reopening criteria on rates, test positive rates, and the equity metric, we also need to be mindful of rates of new cases and new cases of children. It would be unwise to start the hybrid model so soon after winter break. Many people have spent time with family, friends, and others with minimal or no social distancing or other safeguards. Some will have COVID-19, but may be asymptomatic. By the time we find out, the entire class will have been exposed. Now, I would like to say, once MDUSD decides to initiate the phase for hybrid model, and there's an agreement on an MOU with Medea, I would like to encourage that, this is from me, not Medea, that we utilize outdoor classrooms at schools. If the weather is good, it's raining right now, or at least it was, and I have a petition. I currently have 143 signatures of people in the community and teachers who want to do outdoor learning at classrooms. Plus, outdoor education has been shown to improve academic and health outcomes, decrease stress, and deepen positive connections between children. MDUSD can provide in-person instruction and achieve social distancing by using outdoor spaces at school sites. Please, MDUSD board, I encourage you to show your support for the health and well-being of our students, staff, parents, guardians, our students, our wonderful students, and community members. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your public comment. It has been heard. Mr. Board President, not seeing any other registrants ready for participation, this concludes our public comment period. So we can move on in the agenda.
Great, thank you for that. So we'll be moving along to the first agenda item, which is 3.1. So considerations, a discussion item, considerations for physical reopening phases. So Dr. Clark, over to you. Did we lose Dr. Clark?
I was
Okay.
hoping he was one of those Mount Diablo ones. We lost his name some time ago.
He's back here.
Okay.
He's just making an entrance.
There he
I could
is.
hear it. Yeah,
All
sorry
right.
about that. I could hear everything, but I couldn't talk. I was trying to talk. So anyway, yes, thank you so much, President Lawrence. We are ready to move on, and if I could have technology bring up the presentation. And if we could please go to the next slide. Great. So this was our guiding principles that the board agreed to over the summer. And so I just kind of wanted to bring this back and put this out in front of our of our school board and community, staff, students, whoever's watching, and just see really what the board agreed to at that time, that we were committed to quality instruction, that we are committed to equity, adopt a whole school wellness approach, partner with students, families, community, and labor groups, and learn and improve. And so I think as we continue these very, very important discussions, that we that we're grounded in these principles. Can I have the next slide, please? And for the last several meetings, I continue to bring this back about different learning options. And so we are all the way to the left in 100% distance learning. We are examining and proposing to go the next two over to work within a limited hybrid and also within a full hybrid. We are not considering at this point full in-person or in-person unlimited. So again, when we talk about bringing kids back onto campuses, just want to be crystal clear what that entails, and that would be in the a combination of the first three columns there. Can I have the next slide, please? We've been sharing these metrics for the last we've all been looking at these for the last several months since the governor kind of moved us to this area. And so just to kind of review, purple is widespread, red is substantive, orange is moderate, and yellow is minimal. And when we were in purple previously, there was no recommendation or no action from this district to apply for a waiver, which would have allowed us to open. And even when we were in red, we still were not considering applying for a waiver, even though the waiver option was open to us. And so, as you can see, as you can see that over the last few weeks, we have gone. We were in red, and then we went to orange, and then we got just recently we all got moved over to purple, and I just again I'm just sharing what what was shared with me through our county health meetings and just from listening to the governor, is that although in Contra Costa County our numbers don't necessarily represent purple. However, in a way to deal with the outbreaks throughout the state and throughout the country, we were placed back on purple. So again, I just want to reiterate that when we were purple before and red before, we were not discussing applying for a waiver or opening in those conditions. Can I have the next slide, please? It just and this is the same slide as the other. This is just another version of it. Sometimes the map of California, throws people off or whatnot. So again, oh, can you go back one? Thank you. So again, it breaks down the current tiers where we are, and this slide was made on November 13th. And so I just think one thing that we all have learned from, from sort of living through this pandemic day to day is that this is fluid and it changes quite often. And so whether we're debating on wearing masks or whether we're debating on different tiers or whether we're debating on hybrid or distance learning or things to those natures, it has been fluid throughout if we go all the way back to March. Can I have the next slide, please? Again, I think when we continue to hear trust the science and follow what the science is recommending. And again, these are 3 documents that we've been working very closely with, and one is from the California Department of Public Health, and I think that is a reputable set of industry guidance that has been developed for schools and school-based programs. And then the other document is from the California Department of Education, and the other document is from the Contra Costa County Office of Education. And so they're very similar. If you go through them and look at what they're suggesting, the suggestions and the recommendations and the guidance has not changed that much. And so although these have been updated as we've gone along, they have remained relatively consistent. Can I have the next slide, please? So these are commitments as a district that that we have made and that we are standing by. Just real quickly, to follow state and county guidelines, to implement safety protocols, to implement distancing, to promote healthy hygiene practices, intensify cleaning, disinfection, and ventilation. All of these commitments have been shared with the board multiple times, have been implemented out at our school sites. We are working through and we have addressed pretty much these things over and over. However, again, there still could be changes between now and whenever the date is that students come back onto our campuses, but we are committed to following these. And then just the last 4, to follow contact tracing procedures, and I've presented this, to plan for when a staff member, a child, or visitor becomes sick. I mean, that has been in our early plans, to train all staff and educate families, and then to plan for partial or total closure. Next slide, please. And so we, as I shared before earlier, just to kind of paint a picture of what a hybrid program would look like. Oftentimes, we've heard from parents, we have to go to work, we need our kids back in school, and they may be pushing that. I wanted those parents to understand that a hybrid model does not look like how school looked last fall, right? It looks very different, and it's really just a couple hours of face-to-face interaction with the adults on campus. From the first model schedule that was put out, I received lots of feedback, as did the board, that people wanted more information, more questions, and we received lots of questions and lots of information. We heard about that folks wanted to continue with the gains that had been made through distance learning. And so in releasing this sample, we included keeping distance learning as best we can. In this schedule, it's not perfect for anybody. This isn't perfect for working parents. This is not, this is not babysitting. I've heard that a few times. This is not babysitting. This is, of course, this is hard for our employees, because the work that we engage in and the work we do in educating children is hard work. And so I 100% understand that. And so again, this schedule is not the is not the final version, because again, we're still working through it. We would like to get feedback on it. We would like to have collaborative groups look at it. You know, we've also been asked that, you know, that this be worked out at the bargaining table. And personally, professionally, I don't think that, you know, that a schedule such as this, the real details of the schedule can be worked out in a bargaining table, because you just have a handful of folks who are you know, who are engaged in that process. And I think if you are collaborative throughout the district and throughout different schools, that this model could look different at different schools. But in order for that to happen, you have to have input from a wide variety of individuals. Can I have the next slide, please? And again, this was the secondary schedule that still, you know, that still holds into, you know, consideration the need or the request to continue with distance learning in some form. So this does offer for both. But again, we have different high schools and middle schools with different programs and different schedules and different periods of the day, all that I think, you know, need to be worked out. But responding to an abundance of questions from staff and from parents and from students, we threw this out there as, you know, as basically a conversation starter, but by no means is this the final product. And I'm wrapping up. Can I have the next slide, please? So a couple weeks ago, these were things that sort of still needed to be addressed. So we're still talking about health metrics and following the science. And so again, you know, I'm going to rely on the California Department of Public Health. I think that that they are, you know, this is their area, and I as a superintendent in Contra Costa County, I meet with the individuals from the Department of Public Health and from Contra Costa County Public Health every single week. We have a standard meeting. So all of these things we discuss, we hear the latest data, we talk about the trends, we talk about prevention, all of those things. Safety protocols are things that, you know, clearly we are engaged in. Daily schedule needs to be worked out. The educational program, which is important. The student enrollment, which students are either going to be invited, or which students are we going to look to bring back first, or which students are going to remain in distance learning. I think that all needs to be worked out. Clearly our staffing needs to be worked out, and then also our extracurricular activities for students. Those are things that, you know, that we need to provide for our students. You know, we currently have sports hubs at all of our high schools. Students are coming on campus. They're going through the protocols. There's social distancing. We have staff who are there, both educators and you know, and coaching volunteers who've gone through the process. And so we are doing this in lots of areas, and they are being successful, but it only reaches a small amount of students. Next slide, please. And then just how can we support students? And again, I want to keep the focus on students. You know, there's a support hub model out there that, you know, that we floated out earlier, that we could target struggling students. There are students who are worried about losing their edge or losing their competitiveness as they're looking to get into the top schools. You know, so how can we maintain that? How can we provide interventions? How can we meet the needs of our special needs students? In a hybrid model, you know, it's face-to-face support. And again, face-to-face support is what is important. One of the factors that's very important to our students. They have strong relationships with their teachers, with their principals, with the, you know, lunch folks and campus supervisors and people like that. Face-to-face support is essential for our students, and then their own social interactions. Ensure equitable learning opportunities. And I think, you know, as you know, there are families who have the means to put their kids in daycare. There are families who have the means to put their kids in neighborhood learning hubs. You know, there are families who have the means to go to a vacation home, to you know, to do things. We have We have families who have the means where parents can work from home, or, you know, take turns working with the students. We have families who have lots of opportunities to do that. But then also, you know, I think we have to also look at all of our students, and do all of our students have that opportunity? And so, so although the hybrid model may not be best for everyone, and it may cause anxiety, but there are many students out there, you know, that need this type of support. It doesn't, that's not diminishing anything else. It's just saying, hey, there are kids out there that need support. It's important for students to establish routines. It's important to build on the success of distance learning, and it's important for hands-on learning to take place. Can I have the next slide? So because we have, you know, because of the declaration from our state to moving everyone back into purple, and because of the you know, the hybrid model that we put out as a sample, there does not seem to there is not the need for the declaration survey that was scheduled to go out this week. If by, you know, if in the future, you know, next month or whatnot, if you know, if the board and staff feel that, you know, that we can move forward, then that'll be a decision that the board makes, and then at that point we can work on getting you know, commitments from our families about who would like to participate and who would not like to participate. I would like to just share that in Walnut Creek, they have brought back their transitional kindergarten students and some of their special ed students. In Knightson, they have brought back their special day class students. In Byron, they brought back their special day class students. In the Akalani School District, they have about 1,000 students a day attending their schools for myriad activities, whether it be SDC, whether it be choir, whether it's just you know, students coming to get extra support. And San Ramon also opened their doors up today to welcome back their SDC students and special education students as well. So at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to the board for questions, direction. Where would you like, as the superintendent, where would you like me to go in this area? And just looking for a conversation about, you know, about what information you would need to either move forward with this model or similar models, or there's some other ideas out there, or to you know, talk about ways that you know, although we've heard from many that they're highly successful in distance learning, but maybe we can find some other ways that we can mirror that, or we can multiply that out, or maybe there's some improvements we can do to distance learning so those who are not being successful have more opportunity to be successful. So at this point, I'll turn it over to the board for any discussion or questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, Dr. Clark. In a moment, I'll turn to the board, but I do want to make sure from public comment, I think our longtime friend Annie Nolan may have had a comment that we didn't get to. I just wanted to check. Annie, were you looking to make a public comment? I was going to.
Yes, I am.
She is that Annie? I invited CSEA to actually make a statement. So it's actually not a public comment. So it's not the 3 minutes, but
okay.
She is. And I'm gonna and now that I've finished, and I'm sorry, I wanted to give her a proper introduction, but I did invite Annie from CSEA representing her members to come and address the board. And just so the board remembers, we've had Medea, we've also had CST, and now we have CSEA. We also invited our psychologists, but I'm not sure if they're on this call or not. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to CSEA President.
Thank you. Superintendent, board members, and viewers. Also, Aaron and Kaisha, congratulations. You're getting a real taste of what's ahead for you. Well, what I want to start with is opening in January, it worries me. One of the big things that worries me about coming back is we have an older workforce in this district. That's one of the main things. It doesn't seem that people want to go into education anymore. And we're getting less and less teachers, and we're getting more of an older workforce. I know I have. Let me rechange older, wiser workforce. And I'm not sure how we're going to be able to fill. I've got probably 70 job openings, and about 50 of them are special ed assistants. So I'm not sure how we're going to do that if we're going to start. And I'm not sure how many will be able to come back. And I know some of the problems that are happening is I get pictures and I get phone calls about what's going on at some of the schools. For some reason, some schools think it's perfectly fine for my assistants to work to work from home, which there's better connection. Most of them have a better internet than the district does. And some are demanding they come back. And some of the problems I'm getting, which I get pictures, phone calls about how clean everything is, that it's not being cleaned. I don't know, maybe the custodians are overwhelmed with whatever's going on, but I do get pictures there from the schools. And also, I just got a message today, no soap in the soap dispenser. So I don't know if we may have to do another run through our schools and make sure all of this is here. And I think one of the other really big concerns I have is when we do come back, if we come back in January or February or whenever, it's been on the news here lately, which we haven't heard a lot about, is how many kids are catching COVID now. All of a sudden, it's a big issue. I don't know, maybe they're getting sick and then they test them when they find out, because we're not really testing children now. So I'm not sure how we'll do that, but you know, I've been told, well, if they're sick, we'll put them in a room. And I said, so we're going to put all the sick kids in a room, and who's going to watch these students in this room? And another problem is what if the parents can't pick them up? Because we know during regular school year, it happens all the time. They can't come pick their children up. So I'm not sure what we're going to do about that. And I'm really concerned about if we're even going to have enough staff coming back, because between the teachers and us have more contact with the kids than anybody. And we have even more contact than the teachers do, because we handle a lot of their personal cares. There's a lot of bodily fluids involved in this. So, and like I said, we sit right beside them. We're always beside them, helping them. So I have concerns about that. And the other concern I'm hearing about some of the schools where my members are working, people aren't wearing masks. And I think that it's very important. I mean, that's one of the biggest things they're talking about now, wear a mask. So we're not even doing it now. Or I'm hearing from my members telling me that people aren't wearing masks at school. So I don't know. And I heard that gentleman was saying about, you know, it's vacation time. And we know a lot of people are going to do these group family affairs and family this. And we have a lot of our Hispanic families that return home sometime, or some go down to Mexico to visit relatives. So we're going to have people traveling all over the place. And then we're going to come right back to school after all of that. And we won't know if anybody has it. It'll be a week, 2 weeks, something like that before we ever know if somebody has COVID. So I guess that's a lot of my concerns here, is that I'm just worried about, I mean, already things are happening. And when we go back to school, I'm hoping that a lot of this can be taken care of but it should be taken care of now that the schools are being cleaned. Like I said, maybe they're overwhelmed. I don't know what's going on. All I know is I get pictures from different places and about different people not wearing masks. And I'm really worried about if we go back and the children get sick, what are we going to do with these children? I don't know. If somebody can't pick them up, what do we do with them? And a biggie is, who's going to be in that room all day with these sick children? I just think we have some better planning or need to really figure out what we're going to do here. I understand everybody wants to open school. I have a great granddaughter in this district and a granddaughter in this district. But I don't know if everybody's health, and hopefully things will calm down before January, but I don't see that happening, that things will get better. I hope they do. So these are my basic concerns about, especially my members. And like I said, the teachers and us are the ones that are in these rooms all day with these students. And I think I had read somewhere they're going to try and clean them between the two classes. I think you're going to need more custodians for that, aren't you? But anyway, those are my basic concerns on what's going on, because I get calls on a daily basis about people worried, and I don't know if I can come back. I've got all these issues because, like I said, we have a wiser workforce, and a lot of them are afraid to come back. The unknown's kind of afraid, and we really don't know a lot of stuff still yet. So thank you. Those are my very, very big concerns about working with the children and what we'll do if they get sick and how we will handle all of this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Annie. And
Annie.
thank you for so freely sharing your wisdom over the last 8 years. I've appreciated it. So at this point, I would open it up to...
Oh, and then I'm sorry, President Lawrence,
Yes.
we also have, I've just been notified that MDSPA is on the call. So if we have
Wonderful.
a representative, is that Sylvia? I see you nodding your head, Sylvia. Okay,
Yes.
Sylvia. And just so everyone knows, like, I've never seen Annie without a mask, and so I had a hard time recognizing her. So Sylvia, thank you. And I'm sure I haven't seen you without a mask either. All right,
No.
Sylvia.
And my co-president, Sarah, is here as well.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah.
Hello to both of you.
So the floor is yours. I've, like I said, I've invited, I'm inviting these folks out here. We don't have any discussions before they talk. They're going to come and speak freely, and that's why we're bringing them here. So, so go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Dr. Clark, members of the board, thank you for inviting us to participate in this meeting. My name is Sarah Cabezas. I'm a behavioral health specialist too at Olympic High School.
And my name's Sylvia Venturino. I'm a district-wide bilingual school psychologist.
And we are co-presidents of the Mount Diablo School Psychologists Association, or MDSPA. Our union represents school psychologists, behavioral health specialists, and now SEEK leaders who provide mandated services to some of our most vulnerable population of students in this district.
And a little history, our union was formed in 1983 as a bargaining unit of only 14 school psychologists. Over the years, the demands of special education and school-based mental health support services greatly increased. We created more diversified school psychologist roles and welcomed behavioral health specialists at our sites, as well as SEEK leaders to oversee the programs. Our staff has grown so that we could provide improved special education services, mental health services, and student support services across the district in a variety of ways. We now have over 75 members in our union, each one dedicated to serving and supporting our students.
The uniqueness of our assignments allows for strong professional growth and a range of knowledge and expertise within our group. It's important to note that due to our ability to bill Medi-Cal services, many of our positions are cost neutral to the district. Our behavioral health specialists and SEEK leaders are credentialed and licensed clinicians. We provide educationally related mental health services to students in the social emotional education collaborative programs. I know that's a mouthful. As well as in general education settings across the district. We provide weekly individual therapy, group therapy, crisis intervention and assessment, as well as daily behavioral classroom support. We collaborate and consult with a myriad of providers and support staff both within the district and outside of the district.
All the time, complaints all the time.
I'm sorry. We participate in IEP meetings, we create behavior intervention plans, we participate in care meetings. We provide incentive programs for our students within our programs to increase engagement and support positive reinforcement. During distance learning, our BHS are working as effectively as possible, providing behavioral support in the virtual classrooms now. We are in constant collaboration with the teaching staff, providing virtual groups to students, having regular virtual therapy sessions with students, while also trying to increase student engagement with their virtual learning. So groups as well as our incentive programs have actually continued. Participation in IEP meetings, as well as now creating behavior intervention plans for distance learning have continued, as well as daily medical record charting. And while this model has shown to be successful for some students, we continue to see other students struggling to access or engage in the telehealth or remote services. Our current MOU does allow for the option for our members to provide in-person services only when remote services or telehealth services are not feasible for a student and when they're in compliance with the guidelines from the federal, state, and local health agencies, along with MDUSD procedures. As a result, we do have some behavioral health specialists providing in-person services at this time, and we believe that this ensures the highest level of safety for our members as well as students. Our BHS are dedicated to serving a population with great mental health needs. While we're dedicated to providing the very best care to our students, we are concerned that when we return to school campuses and are supporting students who are in person, we will continue to experience challenges being in close proximity situations in order to serve students with their exhibitive behaviors and crises increasing risk. We are going to continue to need to work closely with site administration as well as our district to continue to maintain the safety of our members and our students, as we will be an unstable cohort of providers moving across student classrooms and cohorts.
And school psychologists. We have traditional site-based psychologists supporting school campuses. They collaborate with and consult with teachers, staff, parents. They provide behavioral support and assist in writing behavior intervention plans, provide counseling services to students, participate in student success and care team meetings, conduct assessments for special education services, participate in IEP meetings, provide counseling, crisis counseling, and more. During distance learning, these services continue remotely, and our members are working as effectively as possible. In addition to the site-based psychologists, we also have those working on specialized teams, including preschool assessment team working with our youngest students, bilingual assessment team assisting with and conducting special education evaluations for our Spanish-speaking English language learners, diagnostic, which is a separate team for more intensive diagnostic assessments and consultation services, NPS, completing assessments for our students that are attending non-public schools, ERMS, a team to help determine services for students whose mental health is impacting their education, SUB, to cover the roles of psychs going on leave such as maternity and medical leaves, and FLOAT team, assisting other psychs with assessments when workflow gets impacted, which happens often because our psych to student ratio is approximately 1 to 1,300 as opposed to the 1 to 700 ratio suggested by the National Association of School Psychologists. We also have school psychologists providing mental health therapeutic support and wraparound services to students K-12 and their families. The MDUSD Wraparound and Counseling Clinic is a Medi-Cal certified site through which wraparound and counseling services are delivered to students with Medi-Cal. The counseling support offered through the Counseling Clinic is for students and families where other attempts to address mental health or behavior-related concerns have not yet been successful. These counseling services are intended to address concerns that need support beyond what is provided at the school site. Wraparound is a family-centered process that builds on a multidisciplinary team to help the family develop their own network of support throughout the community. We strive to continue to support our schools and students during this unusual time. The counseling clinic currently has openings for students and families that are ready and willing to engage through telehealth services via Zoom or by phone. Referrals to the program go through the school's care team, and the referral packets are completed by the school psychologist. Most of our school psychologists conduct psychoeducational evaluations. Referrals for special education services typically involve some direct testing along with a thorough integration of information. Testing is just a part of the assessment. A psychoeducational evaluation includes observations, interviews with parents, teachers, review of records, developmental history, progress and intervention programs, and much more. In addition to direct testing, areas of suspected disability are examined, and all of the information is integrated and presented at the student's IEP meeting, along with the information from the parent and the teacher, as well as other service providers. And a determination is made regarding eligibility for special education services. If the student is found eligible, a plan is written and agreed to by the team, and the student then begins to receive special education services. During normal times, testing for special education services typically occurs one-on-one with a school psychologist and student working closely together in a quiet room. COVID-19 created obvious challenges to this. When remote testing arose as a possibility, we had a team of school psychologists who researched various online platforms and tests and were able to come up with assessment tools that have enabled us to do our jobs remotely and effectively. Our side letter during distance learning enables our school psychologists to conduct testing remotely using digital resources and a platform like Zoom. This ensures the safety of both our members and our students. Some challenges to remote testing include technology issues, particularly internet and Wi-Fi issues. Some school psychologists had the intention of testing remotely from their school site office while the student was at home, but the Wi-Fi signal or the internet cut out, the service was poor, inconsistent, the sound cut out, the screen froze up, service failed. So thankfully our side letter allows our members flexibility in work locations, so our members have been able to complete the remote testing from their homes. We also have some school psychologists conducting in-person assessment when remote services are not feasible for a student. An update to our side letter during distance learning allows the members the option to complete in-person assessments if the member determines it is necessary and only when remote or tele-assessment measures are not feasible. For the safety of our members and our students during distance learning, remote testing is the primary means of testing. When in-person testing does occur, it is in a clean room with all the required PPE. One safer option for in-person testing is via one of the test publishers we already contract with, which has tests that were developed for and are available on a digital platform via iPads. It requires 2 iPads, tablets don't work unfortunately, one for the examiner and one for the student. It utilizes Bluetooth so the examiner and the student can be up to 30 feet apart, which is much better than the up-close usual testing that occurs. Unfortunately, funds are not available to purchase iPads, but if there are spare ones hanging around that meet the tech requirements, we would love to utilize them. Regardless of how testing is conducted, IEP meetings are held virtually via Zoom.
We have some things we would like to consider during regarding the reopening of schools. So once again, we believe it's important for the district to understand that due to the nature of our members' jobs when working in person, that we can be considered an unstable cohort, needing to travel between sites and across cohorts within sites. Additionally, with the current plan for the hybrid model, we understand that the goal is to allow our students to once again access their curriculum in person. We also want to acknowledge that often our services require pulling students out of those classrooms to serve them. We want to remain collaborative around the best manner in which we may still support our students without interfering with their in-person learning. Many of our members who have worked at their respective school sites have experienced issues with the Wi-Fi or internet instability, and we are concerned to the extent that there will be constant disruption with therapy sessions, testing sessions, counseling sessions, and various meetings that we are required to attend. With constant disruption, student services will be impacted. Flexibility in our work location has proven to be effective, and it would be helpful if it continued. if required to be on site with all other staff that are also utilizing internet or Wi-Fi services, does the district have a plan to ensure that the internet or Wi-Fi will be available to support the needs of those sites? Additionally, we all know that Contra Costa's returned to the purple tier, and while we understand the district's plan is to reopen in January, should we be in a more favorable tier by then? We are curious about what the district's plan might be if we were to shift dramatically back into the purple tier, kind of like how we have this past week. Our union is committed to safety, both for our members and our students. We're supportive of and encourage discussions with the district in regards to safety as it pertains to the reopening of our schools. We're hopeful for a properly laid out and implemented reopening plan that supports the goal of opening safely. We appreciate and agree with the board's understanding and value placed on the importance of safety in regards to our communities and students and employees. And we understand that this is a difficult situation for everyone. And we're dedicated to working collaboratively to ensure that our members may continue to safely provide services to the students that we serve, whether that be remotely or in person.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate this opportunity to share about our union members and what we have been doing during distance learning, as well as our union's perspective on the schools reopening. Thanks.
Great. Thank you both for everything you and your members are doing and for the very comprehensive presentation. So thank you. It's appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Dr. Clark, do we have anybody else or are we ready for board discussion? Okay. And so at this point, I'd open up for board discussion, and I would certainly invite Trustee-elect Nzewi and McFerrin to go ahead and fully participate as well. So I'll open it up for board questions and comments.
I have a question for Dr. Clark. Since you meet with the county frequently, the county has never talked about, in my knowledge, but you might know, they've never talked about changing the designation by community, correct? If we're purple as a county or we're red as a county, they're not considering looking at anything that breaks them down by communities, are they?
Well, the only thing that would come close to that, it would be looking at the equity metrics that's already built into the formula.
Because my concern is around equity, because it depends on what kind of equity we're talking about. Because I understand some of the communities have a higher rate, but is it equitable to offer education opportunities in those other communities that don't and not afford that to the kids that live in the lower income communities? Is it equitable to not open their schools? Is that kind of a stigmatization? Oh, they can't come to school because they're not being responsible. And is it equitable to the parents? Because in those low income communities, some of those parents need to get back to work and they don't have the means of daycare or paid care. And so they're home with their kids. So I just want to be cautious when we're talking about equity, it cuts across a lot of different lines. Now, as far as the purple designation that we're in now, am I correct in my assumption that to do waivers, well, first off, you have to have, they'll let you open if you were already opened in red and then we're purple, you're okay, correct? From a county perspective?
Yeah, if you've already started the opening process, I mean, kids are on your campuses, then regardless if it goes back to purple, you can still continue on.
And then when it gets into applying for waivers, that has to be done on a school by school basis, not a district, correct?
Right, so at this point, waivers are only open to elementary schools. And so we would have to do, if that were the route, and we've never discussed this, but if that were the route, we would do basically a waiver, but we would include all of our elementary schools in there.
Okay. Because, and I'll just say, and then I'll be quiet so other people can comment, ask questions. For me, just personally, I'm not comfortable under a purple designation moving forward, but that's just me. And I'll listen, I might learn more. So.
I have a question as well. On October 26th, the board voted on those 3 recommendations, and the first one was to authorize allowable student contact and on-site participation for different activities. And I know the negotiations for that for those were still ongoing and they were going to start before January. So given the new development in the rising COVID cases, where do those stand right now? That's for Dr. Clark.
So we want to continue with the negotiation process. We actually have a session scheduled for tomorrow, and so we want to continue moving forward, working with our labor partners, so that if the metrics throughout the county were to improve, that that then we would be ready and we wouldn't have to go through the long arduous process of bargaining at the table. However, as I've said before, things change, and this is a fluid situation. We are not proposing opening up our schools and bringing everybody back. I mean, we have been pretty consistent saying that there are groups of students out there that are not being successful and have high needs. And when you look at equity, as Trustee Mason was speaking about, you have to give folks what they need so that they can be successful. And that may look differently in different areas. And so we want to continue our work at the table, and we're going to continue going forward with that, just knowing that the outcomes could be different because of our situation that's beyond our control.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Sorry, Michelle, were you not done?
You can go, don't worry about it.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, when Ms. Mason was speaking, I was this question occurred to me. So the notion of having different responses by community, is that something that's ever been discussed with any of our bargaining units? Is it within the realm of possibility that could be negotiated? So in other words, we say we're going to open in these communities, but not in these communities. Has that ever come up? Or in your opinion, professional opinion, do you think that would be, would there be some receptivity to talking about that?
Right. So that has not come up. I mean, the stance has been, and it's, this is public. This was, published in the, in the local paper that, when all communities reach a particular level. So it's not one community has reached that level of, minimal cases, and therefore that community would be open. That has never been, that has never been on the table. It's really been all communities or no communities. And that's been pretty standard across the board.
Okay, thank you.
Newbie here.
Yes. Well, welcome.
Thank you. I'd want to just be careful while those communities in our district that are highest impacted by COVID, as Dr. Clark mentioned, the state uses an equity index, and much of our school district falls into what's called the lowest, are in census tracts of the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index. And a lot of that is around the Monument community, Bay Point, and North Concord and Pacheco. But they're high level, and in fact, those communities do currently exceed the measure of the state of greater than 5.2% positives. But I would warn us not to think that that high positivity rate has anything to do with behavior when those communities are have significant Latinx families and people, and which research has shown throughout this pandemic that they are suffering disproportionately both in infection and death from COVID. But it's not because of behavior, it's because those folks typically have not had the privilege of working from home from day one. They are in jobs that have kept all of us, the rest of us, going. And so their infection rates are because they are in, their high infection rate can be pointed to because they have greater exposure to the public continuously. So I would like us to keep that in mind. And then also keep in mind, to Dr. Clark's immediate point just right now is that I think when we say community-wide, we mean community in our district, not all communities in the county. And so that I think the ask is that the district, that we use the metrics, if they could cut out Mount Diablo Unified School District somehow and put us, see, are we in a purple, are we in a red, are we in the orange as a school district? Okay, and then I'm wondering, so we've gotten a lot of feedback from teachers and from parents who want to be back in school, but what I feel like hasn't been articulated specifically is who would be prioritized. The Department of Public Health from the state and the County Board of Education, so they're all on the same page, but that schools can come back and should, they're not required, but should prioritize students with special education services, students who are homeless, experiencing homelessness, students who are in foster care, students who are at risk of neglect and abuse. And I've never heard in the discussions any specificity to prioritizing those students to coming back. So I'm just curious if that is going on in the background.
Dr. Clark, because we have discussed that, do you want to address that, Dr. Clark?
Absolutely, yes, and you bring up very, very, very valid points. We had when we were first discussing this process, we actually presented, and it's in our it's posted on our board minutes somewhere, and I can obviously share a copy with you. But we did break down all of what you said. We shared data with the number of foster youth that we have in the district, the number of homeless, the different, just because a student has an IEP that may look differently. So you may have all the way from nonverbal autistic to severely disabled to a student who needs speech services, right? And those are very different. And so we did rank all of those and basically prioritize all of those. However, when it came time to start to work on agreements on these, it was just there was too much to do to try to come up with a separate agreement for each group of students. There was just no way that we were going to be able to get that done. So we decided instead to focus on all students, but hopefully in the process, we would allow for some of our most vulnerable students to be able to come back in very, very small targeted groups to come back and receive some of that support. So I can email you that information, and I think it would be helpful, but you do.
I do remember you going over it, but I feel like based on the public comment that we get, that's getting lost. At least from the parents who are providing public comment or comment anywhere, that's getting lost, that who would be prioritized should we reopen, or when we do reopen, and if we ever reopen in a hybrid model.
Thank you.
The discussion I remember along those lines was the groups that you discussed, but also newcomers in particular, and English language needs, as well as children of essential workers in that group as well. But I agree that is something that we as a board could clarify, I think, if that's getting lost in the system here. But I had a question about the idea of the small groups, because this is something that we've talked about as something that would happen, before hybrid, that ultimately, I think there's people from all different perspectives that recognize that there are students who we are unsuccessful in serving with distance learning, and that there are teachers and staff who have asked to be able to serve them on our sites. And the one thing that's blocking it was, Dr. Clark, what you described in our last meeting, which is that there's a line in the MOU with the teachers union that says that no students shall come on campus except for very specific things like picking up a textbook. So I think sometimes we get this discussion, should we come back or not, as though it's a binary decision. And I think there's an in-between piece here that is getting lost, which is that voluntary small group in-person learning opportunities, such as a one-to-one counseling or a math intervention, or creating an opportunity for students to engage socially with each other to continue their mental health, right? I'm glad to see that you've reported on the that there has been agreement for students to come on campus for required testing. And so my question would be, if we can agree on protocols for a teacher to meet in person with a student to give them a test, why can we not use those same protocols for a teacher to meet in person with a student to build a trusting learning relationship? So again, I feel like this is separate from the discussion about bringing large numbers of students onto a campus. This is really talking about some very small subsets of students and the fact that we have not been able to achieve that. And some of that is our special needs students that parents have been asking about.
So yeah, so those, we're going to continue those discussions. They have not been successful in the past. We you know, we get stuck on the get stuck on the metrics. You know, I mean, I'm not talking away from the table, because the demands from Medea were posted in a local paper, and they're very specific on what their metrics are, and that's what they believe in, and I understand that, and we tend to follow what the county public health is saying, and state public, California public health, and so we just been stuck there. But we're hoping that we can make progress on that, and I'm hoping, you know, again, if it's the wish of the board, that you know, that we continue to pursue that, because, you know, I've been very transparent and very open, is that I don't, opening up our doors to everyone and saying, everyone come back and let's just pick up where we left off. That's not an option. It's also not an option to open up schools in one community and not open up schools in another community. Who's going to make that decision of where we open up? I'm not in favor of that. I am in favor, 100% in favor of providing support to those small numbers of students who need it in a safe manner, with you know, with those who would like to provide that support. I'm in 100% in favor of that, and I've directed. You know, direct is a tough word. I'm going to take that back. I've collaborated with our negotiation team, and they all have an equal voice on that team. And they all, you know, they all see the benefits of that, and they all believe in that, and they're all communicating that, and so hopefully we can get to some, you know, we can get to a place where that can happen.
Okay, and there are protocols around that as well. I know that in the slide presentation you had those 3 links to guidance from the county and from the state, but there's a specific letter that I think we have a link to from our website somewhere, but maybe it'd be a good refresher, is the letter that was on September 4th from the California Department of Health, that was guidance related to cohorts. That was very specific about childcare, daycare, youth, you know, school sites, very specific settings. It's not talking about a large number of people. It's not talking about mixed cohorts. It's very specific. And so I wonder if those would be, if that guidance is still in effect from September, and if it relates to also where does our after school CARES program fit into this? Because I know they've been distance learning. Has there been any discussions with our CARES program for providing any kind of very small defined cohorts in the way that some cities have provided and some daycares have provided?
Yes, and so we do have, at the request of Trustee Mason, we do have Stephanie Roberts. I see she just unmuted herself. She knew I was gonna, she knew I was gonna call on her, but we do have Ms. Roberts here, who can kind of shed some light on those after school programs. And I think, you know, Trustee Cowan, you bring up a wonderful point. And so Ms. Roberts, if you could just kind of just touch I mean, you heard the question, but if you could just kind of expand on the services that you guys have been, that CARES have been providing, and maybe that CARES could provide if we were able to allow students following this guidance onto our campus.
Right. So we've been waiting to figure out when we've been able to get permission to have to be on campus with students.
Yeah, Ms. Roberts, sorry to cut you off, but just we have some new folks in the room. So could you just introduce yourself and tell them exactly what you do?
Yeah, my name is Stephanie Roberts. I'm the Director of Partnerships and MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support. I oversee grants and business partnerships, as well as the after-school program. We have a very large grant-funded after-school program for our Title I middle school and elementary schools. We've been in operation since 1999, and they are grant-funded programs that provide expanded learning from the end of school till 6 o'clock every school day, and then a 6-week summer program. With the pandemic, the California Department of Ed gave flexibility with these funds to provide distance learning opportunities. We supported the grab-and-go meals. We provide make and take activities. They're doing distance learning activities, a YouTube channel, and are kind of demoing stuff virtually and really connecting and pushing into the classroom. When hybrid became a conversation, I went back to the team and said, okay, what could we do? And we looked at 2 options. And it really depends on, you know, the commitment and the interest of our families, and we don't know that yet. So based on the interest of the families, we either can have small face-to-face programs during the expanded learning time. So school's out at 2:45, 2:30. We can take them from 2:30 to 5 o'clock, do more nutrition, physical activity, enrichment, embed some social emotional interaction, and just getting face-to-face support and seeing each other. We would do that in the MU with 6 feet social distance, which then would limit the number of students that we serve. So on average for our new board members, our sites serve anywhere from 80 to 180 kids. And most of our multi-use rooms only fit about 50 with 6 feet social distancing. So based on the interest of our communities, we have to determine, let's say a Cambridge Elementary, which is one of our elementary schools, let's say Cambridge has 40 kids that want to come, and then Shore Acres has 80. We've got to make a determination on could we staff, because we would need to increase our staff for a smaller ratio. Our partners are looking at a 2 to 15 to 16 ratio, where normally it's a 1 to 20. So we would look at having to increase the staff to student ratio, but then also determine, do we have higher needs at some schools? And then we determine that we only open up at some schools and move our staff to serve those students, or we have smaller programs at all of the eligible CARES expanded learning programs. So just like we're doing as a district, we're trying to determine how many staff can come back, because we do also have an aging staff. So we're looking at about a 65% of our staff willing to come back, with about 35% willing to provide the distance learning. And so we are proposing, based on whatever the district decides, that we'll provide 2 opportunities. We will offer a distance learning platform through the rest of the year until we need to take that off the table. And then we would provide a face-to-face hybrid model. We would look at only serving the students that are in Group A on Monday, Tuesday. So the Group A kids would not be coming on Thursday, Friday. So just like with hybrid, we're proposing to serve the kids that come in Group A on the Monday, Tuesday. The kids that come on Thursday, Friday, Group B, they would come. The challenge is that we wouldn't be a stable cohort, because it could be 4 second graders from Mrs. Jones's class, 3 from Mrs. Roberts, and 5 from Mr. Clark's. But we would use the 6 feet social distancing, the mask, the cleaning. We talked about having every kid having their own supplies. But part of our, so that's, I mean, we have all the ideas in the works, but it will, depending on, do we do it at all 16 sites, or do we have it at just pockets of sites? To us, it made it seem, let's find out what the interest is, and then we'd have to make a decision around, let's target 3 schools, 2 schools out in Bay Point, 2 in the corridor, 1 in the Solano area. So we didn't want to get down that road and make a predetermined that this school would have it until we knew what the interest of our families would. And we do have priority enrollment. It's actually from the beginning. Board member Mason's very familiar with it. So foster youth, homeless students automatically are enrolled in CARES. Even if there isn't space, we make space. The students that have the program at their school are high Title I schools, so low income, principal, teacher recommendation. And then we do take into consideration that if one student is recommended from a family, that we give priority to that family siblings, so the families could make sure that their students, their whole family could attend. But you know, we have a really committed team, but a lot of what we're proposing, different than what we've been doing from March to now, would be dependent on these small clusters of offering the programs from 12:45 to 2:30. If we choose not to do something after school based on the conversation we have with you as a board, we can continue to then push in during the day and provide more small group support. But we see our strengths with STEM, physical activity, enrichment, student voice, and then that targeted intervention. We do have teacher leaders that we have on staff that provide targeted intervention, so we can push that in. But it really depends on where we go and what tier we're in. But we were happy to know that we had a decent number of staff that were willing to come back, and our partners, Bay Area Community Resources, are open and willing for us to have a conversation with ensuring that staff will be safe. So that gives you a synopsis. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm just here to listen and see where you guys would like us to go. But we're fortunate that we have the grant, and California Department of Ed has been able to give us that flexibility to continue to provide the services for our students, because I know our families and our teachers and our principals have really found it very complimentary, and we're just grateful to keep doing the work.
So can I just ask you to add one more piece of information that who the staff is?
Okay.
I mean, I know, but I would think it's important to understand what employee group we're talking about here.
Okay, very good point. Thank you, Joanne. We have a partnership. Mount Diablo Unified has a partnership with Bay Area Community Resources. They're a nonprofit entity based out of the Oakland area. They partner with many school districts. Our partners have changed over the years, but they are the primary employers of the after-school program coordinators, who are basically the people that oversee the program, the recreation specialists, who are the individuals who are working and are supervising the groups of 20 to now probably 15. We have a after-school coordinator who is an administrative position, and that person is Eric Rigo. He is a Mount Diablo employee. We have a teacher liaison who coordinates all the academic component, a portion of her time. So primarily it's Eric, who's the coordinator, and the teacher, and then we have one support staff. And the rest of our staff are subcontracted employees through Bay Area Community Resources. Mount Diablo is the fiscal agent, which is why we aren't in any kind of negotiations, because they aren't Mount Diablo employees. They are subcontracted employees. Did that help answer the question, Joanne?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that why they have a choice whether they want to provide their expertise in person or away?
And why we've had a little bit more flexibility with them willing to come and help with the grab and go meal programs, to come on campus usually 1 to 2 times a month and hand out make and take enrichment and STEM activities. We haven't had to negotiate those agreements, but CARES is a Mount Diablo program, and we want to be complementary to our bargaining unit. So we've tried to be very thoughtful about not duplicating efforts and staying focused on what we can do to support the students, the families, and the communities in collaboration with district employees.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Mhm.
Other board comments, board questions?
I just had one more question about, has CARES done any type of survey of current families since March to find out?
We don't. We have a survey ready. And then I talked with Jennifer Sachs last week, and we were trying to figure out, we can do that and find out what the interest is, but we were thinking we would collaborate that with the survey that we sent out to our families, and then we would follow up with them. But since our survey is a little delayed, if the board and Dr. Clark would like us to move forward and at least get an interest, we could gather that data and come back. We have we use Class Dojo and we partner with the school principals, so we could get kind of a guesstimate of how many families would be interested and then kind of plan accordingly. But we have not sent that out yet, but we have one in draft form.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, Ms. Mayo.
Thank you. Dr. Clark, now that we've moved back to the purple tier, and previously we had the athletic groups doing activities after school, are they permitted to continue with their activities after school? Well, it's not after school, but anyway, with their conditioning program, is that allowed to be continued at this point in time?
Yes, it is.
And that's because it was existing while we were in red and orange. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And it's been going on it's been going on throughout this, even when we were in red previously, it's been continuing to go on. So it's been a constant.
Furthermore, as the California Interscholastic Federation, it still has the set date to start sports as December 7th. I know because I do cross country and track. So that date, there were supposed to be guidelines sent out last week, but given Newsom in the state's recent updates, those have been postponed. However, the date is still December 7th. So up in the air in terms of when the season is starting, but yeah.
Well, it's always interesting when one group can start ahead of another group, and that causes some tension between different populations in our school communities. The other question I had, there have been several comments that if we were to move forward with hybrid, that if we suddenly had to step back and go to virtual learning, that it would be too much of a challenge for the district to accomplish that. And I'm hoping that you can help me understand that perception, because when I'm looking at the sample, and I'm calling them sample instructional template that you've put out for both elementary and secondary, particularly in the elementary with the virtual learning in the morning, and then just the the in-person learning in the afternoon, it seems to me it would be easy to change that afternoon to full virtual so that all students would have virtual during the day. Can you explain the other perception that it would be difficult to return to all virtual?
Yeah, so you bring up an excellent point, and I think the team who put this schedule together, the collaborative effort really took these things into account. Was we heard loud and clear, students wanted to remain with their teachers, teachers wanted to remain with their students, students wanted to remain in their classrooms. We needed flexibility to open in phases, but then also if we needed to close, it really is a seamless closing if need be. And so I think I think just due to anxiety and due to the unknown and just general fear that's out there is why we're hearing that if we were to open in a phased hybrid approach, and if we were to close, that would be a difficult process. I think the anxiety has contributed to those to some of those feelings, because I'm not going to say it would take no effort, but it definitely could shut down if we were to open up, or if we were to start to phase students in, and then all of a sudden we realize this isn't working, we could then backtrack quite seamlessly. And so you're absolutely correct on that, and I just attribute it to anxiety and fear.
Right. So thank you for that information. I thought there was a piece that I was missing, and that's not to say, my comments aren't meant to say that it will be easy to suddenly switch to full virtual, but it won't be a huge hurdle as we might think. I guess I was one of the original board members who recommended that we consider reopening around January 19th or so, because that was 14 days after New Year's. And that just seemed like the magic number for me. I'm still hopeful that we can consider, especially the small groups, when the metrics and the county allows for us to bring those students back onto campus, that we proceed with the small groups that need those essential services. And I'm hoping that we can still explore the in-person learning option and reopening. But my expectation and understanding is that as long as we're in purple, we won't be reopening entirely, unless you can give me a different understanding, Dr. Clark.
So I've said over and over that we are not planning on opening in purple, and that's definitely not part of our plan. I do just want to go back to the January date first. One of the reasons why the January date came up was because the semester for our high school students really starts on January 5th, which the 5th is a holiday, but it starts on the first week of January. And so the 11th was put out to give us a week of sort of preparation time, right? And then to start the process a week after we've already been back. Now, I know people are concerned with quarantining and things of that nature. However, this decision was made purely with the students in mind who were in high school, and this was the end of their semester, and we really, we wanted to make sure that they were able to, because at the time when we made the date, we weren't sure if they were going to be able to keep their current teachers or their current schedules, and so we wanted to have time to be able to make those adjustments. Even with the current model, we still have our high school, our juniors and seniors could typically still be out, wouldn't step foot back on campus, the ones who choose to, 3 weeks into the semester. So it's none of it's a perfect science, but that was the intention with the January date.
And I understand that completely. You made that clear when we were talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to express a concern that I read in one of the public comments. And as Trustee-elect Nzui was saying, many of the students in some communities have parents who work and who work during school hours. And one of the public comments was talking about transportation options for students leading up to January. What are plans for transportation for students? This particular comment said from Bay Point to Mount, but is there conversation surrounding transportation for small groups too?
Absolutely, and we have our whole transportation fleet that's available. We transport students, our special education students, and then also we transport from Bay Point over to Mount Diablo High School. So that would continue to take place. I am open. Again, just because I'm open to it doesn't necessarily mean that it can become a reality. But I am open to looking at if we were to go down this route, and if families were experiencing some of that difficulty, I am open to exploring this on a short-term basis of expanding our transportation services to make sure that, that kids who want to get to school but can't have an opportunity. But again, just because I would like to see that happen, the reality of that, may not come to fruition, but I am definitely open to discussing that and looking into that. And we have actually, just so you know, we have, hypothetically, here at the district office, we have examined that.
Okay, great. And then just in the interest of transparency, I'm assuming this particular public commenter would want to know that information, so maybe included in a future superintendent's report.
Thank you for bringing that up, Trustee Alas. I think that's a question I've heard as well, and is related to the equity concerns, right? Especially with the newer sample schedule being a couple of hours in the afternoon, that might be much more accessible to parents who are working from home than parents who are working a full day. Many of our essential workers may not be able to, provide transportation in the afternoon. So I appreciate that is something that is being explored as well. And I assume it would need to, first we would figure out which parents are interested in coming back on campus, and then and which of them have transportation needs, and then go from there.
One thing I just wanted to, with the entire board here and entire transparency, is that in our December board meeting, we as staff would be looking to come forward with with an updated sort of recommendation of where we are at that time, because we knew as we were looking at these plans. I mean, again, I'm following the news all day, every day, every night, every single night. So clearly we took into consideration that we're going into the winter months, that it is flu season, and that these situations remain fluid. So we knew, just because we made a recommendation in October, that come close to January, that our situation could change dramatically. We could be in a real bad spot in terms of cases and things of that nature, or we could have been trending on a upward, in a more safe direction. And so I think all along that we knew that we'd probably have to come back to the board and do some sort of update of where we are. And at the time we were hoping to be able to have commitments from our families and things of that nature, but again, this is a fluid situation, and that's one of the reasons why we've scheduled so many of these study sessions. That's why we've dedicated so much time to this during our meetings, because this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, or it's not an easy fix to any of these issues that we're facing.
So I just kind of want to build off of that. I think I appreciate your presentation tonight, especially because I think you were really trying to have everyone involved, look at it from all different angles, and to keep representing the various stakeholder groups and input that we're all getting. It occurs to me, it's like trying to have a conversation with hundreds of people, right? I mean, we're looking like we're a small group here, but really, with the comments and trying to represent the comments, et cetera, it's can be pretty daunting. But I guess, going forward, it's just going to be, it's a process. It's just going to have to keep doing this. And I hope that the folks that are making, coming on to make comments, we saw a little bit of chatter tonight as well, and are really listening, to that, because the more everyone can kind of step back and see this through the eyes of different stakeholders, the better the outcome is going to be, the better decision that we'll be able to come, or you all will be able to come to. And so I just want to thank you, Dr. Clark, kind of framing the conversation tonight that way. And I think, we can visibly see, your process and your again, trying to, fairly represent, but, still stick with what your core beliefs, et cetera. So I really just wanted to say, I think you're a good model for that. I thank you for that. I'm going to encourage everybody, whether it's someone just, again, weighing in with a public comment, someone writing emails, someone stewing about it at home, all frustrated. It's a very emotional issue. And, my opinion can change by the moment, depending on who I'm listening to, but we all come with our own life experience as well and our own family structure. And so we have to recognize how that's influencing our thinking. But it's kind of like what's happening nationally again, sadly, but if we're going to be best if we come together with really having listened and considering all the elements and a commitment to coming to a solution and to an answer. So that may have to get changed, as you said. So anyway, I just wanted to add that comment.
Thank you, Ms. Durkee. Other board questions, other board comments?
Okay, I couldn't get my unmute button.
Oh, okay.
Can you clarify, if the guidance says stable cohort of 14 and 2 adults? That's how I've read it, and I read it over and over. And that's stable cohorts for childcare, for schools, for everything. So I'm curious because I do hear, and I heard Stephanie, I think, the picture went away, so I don't have the name, but mentioned, yes, one, that it would be pretty impossible to do stable cohorts in the CARES program, and that you could fit up to 60 kids in the multipurpose room, which gave me, I have to admit, gave me great pause because it's indoors and that's 60, not 14, and not stable. But why are we able to discuss being over 14? I've heard 15 to 17 in the classroom or something. I'm sure that I'm just missing something.
Yeah, so again, many of the the guidance that we get are that it's guidance. These are the best practices. This is what we are recommending. A lot of these are not mandates. And again, this has been one of the challenging things throughout this entire pandemic is, we receive excellent guidance on many different areas, but then, like sometimes we are, as a profession, we're very compliant. These are the guidelines, this is the policy, these are the procedures, and we follow those. And in COVID, it has been, these are best practices and these are the guidances and this is what you should do. However, it's not a mandate. It's up to, it's up to your governing board. It's up to your local, local officials. It's decided more on a local level. So, again, I think we would, our intention is to follow the guidance as close as possible. I think when Ms. Roberts was talking about the multipurpose rooms, I think those are what, we're not considering keeping 50 kids in the multipurpose room at one time, but because that's the capacity of that particular facility, then that has to be the number. Now, of course, you can rotate kids in and out and things of that nature and use other parts of the campus. So, we're not proposing bringing 50 kids of any group, any age together all in one in an enclosed environment. But the guidance, is just that. And we would hope that the board would hold us accountable to following the guidance as stated. So we would want 14 children and two supervising adults. That would be our cohort. So we would follow that as closely as possible. I hope that somewhat answers it. Does it answer a little bit? Okay. All right.
No, that does answer. And I think I'm in childcare and it follows the same rules, but it has been mandated. So childcare licensees can't they have to maintain that 14. So that was the lens through which I am, because through licensing, it is mandated right now.
Dr. Clark, can I just add one thing?
Please.
Okay, the CARES Expanded Learning Program does not follow the licensings of a child care license.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah, I was just saying the lens
Yeah.
through which I'm working is that for the last however many months, you know,
100%.
that guidance is a mandate in childcare, in licensed childcare. And I do understand that after school.
And the
is not.
CARES would be overjoyed if there were other spaces besides the MU and the outside and the library. So we would be working in conjunction with the principals, but we also have to keep those classrooms available for the teachers to teach. And so any unused spaces, we would be working with the sites to determine, could we then have more spaces so students aren't? And that's where we based on the need, it may be very small programs across the sites versus larger. And then we really have to prioritize which students would be attending the program when and if we do open. But rest assured for the board as well as the community that's listening, CARES will continue to do everything that they have been doing moving forward, and we will offer both services when and if we get out of the purple tier and we bring back small groups. It would just be an additional learning opportunity and social opportunity for students to get more than just a 1 or a 2 hour interaction. It would get them to 5, and then it could potentially help some of our working families. And then we would, of course, coordinate with our food services department, where we would partner and continue to do the supper program and the meal distribution.
And that brings to mind, actually, I did hear of a program that was called CARES in Pleasant Hill that was run by the city of Pleasant Hill, because there was a parent who told me their child was in person in the CARES program, and I was wondering where that was, because I didn't think our CARES program was in person. So the city is apparently running a similar program for RMD USD students and others, I suppose, in the city of Pleasant Hill. So my question is, are we coordinating with them to know which of our students are there? And are there other cities that are also providing this type of a childcare service?
So I received an email from them today, and they were asking me to publicize their services, and I just wasn't sure if that's appropriate or not. So I was gonna work with work with my team to see if that's something that we ought to be publicizing, because again, we don't, I don't want to refer families over there and then it's not up to the standards that we have, and I have no reason to think that it's not, but it's not Mount Diablo Unified, so I would be concerned. And then I shared this with Ms. Roberts, several weeks ago, but CARES is like a common name for some of these after school programs and different programs, because it's a common name. So if you just Google CARES, Mount Diablo is not going to be the only CARES program that's out there.
But we are the best.
But a plug for the Pleasant Hill program is $52 a day, and they'll take your student, and they were sort of targeting the middle school students, and so again, that's all. That was the first I had heard about it, was when I received the flyer today.
And I believe that's being offered through the Pleasant Hill Recreation and Park District, which is separate from the city. It's not part of the city organization.
So I'm just interested if that is a model where they are following the similar, protocols to what, that would be interesting to compare. How is that working? And then would it be feasible for then, our CARES program to be providing something like that, which of course ours is free of charge to students who need it. So being able to, again, that's another sort of equity piece, right? To see what's possible for us to provide. I did have another question in terms of the framing of all of this. I'm hearing concerns about meeting student needs and also accountability. So in terms of student needs, there are some needs that really we can, in person would be the way to solve that. Students who are in unsafe situations at home, or are having particular special needs, or technology issues in some cases. But I've also been hearing that there are other student needs out there that maybe can be addressed through other means, maybe improving our distance learning programming. Maybe it's giving out a second hotspot because there's multiple students accessing a single hotspot, and so the internet is glitching in that space. Communicating in a home language and doing some sort of home visit to our newcomer families. Where are we in those other, the rest of the menu of strategies to really deal with the learning loss and the most intense student needs beyond just providing an in-person space?
Right. Well, I mean, I see Ms. Sachs jumped on, and I can definitely, have her give you more details. But I'll just say overall is that we right now, I mean, I think we've heard it through the public comments over the last couple of weeks, is that our teachers are are that main contact for their students, and and so if students are expressing a need that that they have, then usually because that teacher has the most contact with that student, then they can then refer either to the administration or to the counselors, depending on who's on staff, where they can help those students with what their whatever their needs may be at that particular level. So, but like in terms of hotspots, we still have not distributed all of our hotspots. We still have hotspots that we have here. We have hotspots that are out, that are distributed and are out, that we monitored, and they haven't been activated, or they're not being activated. They're being turned off. So again, it's really difficult to to know exactly what all of the needs are that our students have, because we're not physically seeing them every day. We're seeing them through Zoom, and I've been on lots of Zoom calls in teachers' classrooms. I've seen what it looks like, and I've and it's difficult. I'm not gonna when you got 28 kids, 28 little boxes and things like that, it's hard to to be able to give that individualized attention to each one of those students. And I know our teachers do small groups and things of that nature, but it is hard to really know their needs. But when you think of the needs of a nonverbal autistic student, right? Those are not going to be met on distance learning. I mean, it's just not. There has to be some sort of support for that student. Abuse, right? Students who are suffering through child abuse and neglect and things of that nature. We still get into these debates on whether or not a camera should be on or off and things of that nature. So there's just a lot there. So I don't know, Miss Sachs, do you want to chime in? I can just throw you on the spot a little bit to kind of respond to some of the support systems that we have in place.
You really covered quite a bit. For those of you I don't know, my name is Jennifer Sachs, and I'm the Chief of Educational Services here at Mount Diablo. Erin, it's good to see you. Our paths crossed again. We worked together in Pittsburgh, so nice to see you, and welcome, Shisha. Glad you're here. Just a couple things. At the elementary level, we've got a lot of school sites that are actually doing home visits. So Trustee Count, it's something that actually, the administrators have been working with their community liaisons. They're doing it in a very methodical, strategic, safe manner. They're reaching out to the families. But really, when we're trying to get to know exactly what those challenges and the barriers are, just beyond what superficially we understand that's going on in the classroom, that's really provided a lot of sites with a glimpse into additional supports we might be provided. At the elementary level, majority of our school sites have set up instructional materials pick up and drop off. And many of our teachers are actually individuals that are working in order to support that. Just a personal story, I have a student teacher in my home, actually, that's working in Mount Diablo, and she once a week goes to the school site and is involved with that with her master teacher. And so it is something where you actually do get to see the family and the student. You can make that connection and really hopefully be able to ask those questions if, let's say, somebody has not been submitting work or doesn't seem to be on the Zooms or in that Google Classroom as much as they should have. At the middle school and high school level, a huge shout out to the counselors as well as the classroom teachers and the administrators. I was just talking to a principal today who gave me a single person's name. She's actually a homeless foster youth student, and she's doing the best she can from her car. And she is checking in with that administrator, and really the administrator is giving her thoughts, advice, opportunities to, with locations of where she can access free Wi-Fi and different things such as that. But it's happening a variety of different ways. And as these stories are coming to us, we are making different plans, whether or not it's a multiple hotspot or different materials we're sending home to students. One last point of contact, which actually has been very, very interesting to see, is with the assessment and the testing that we have done. We've done hundreds of initial LPAC testings. And the LPAC is one of those state required assessments for our English learners, and they're new to our family. So many of them are quite young, but we have them at all levels. And this is a very much a one-on-one, mostly remote assessment, but it is something where our staff is connecting with these families and hearing their stories to determine how best can we support their needs. So it's vast, it's varied in its way of how we're getting to those other stories, but it is something that we just learn more every single day as we meet with families, and really huge props to our teachers, our site-based staff members that are the face of supporting our community throughout this, because our families see him, if not once a week, quite frequently, even walking past the office, making an appointment, knocking on that door, having that secretary come out and sit on the bench, physical distancing and masks, engaged in order to provide the support that's needed. So just a little bit of additional information.
Thank you, very helpful.
Thank you for that. Just one quick call out I would have is that on our campuses right now, we do have daycare providers. And I know that they have concerns as we've planned for our reopening with the hybrid, that some of those daycare providers are potentially being displaced, and that for us to continue to work with them and give them guidance if they're going to be able to stay on campus, because I think, if we're not reopening on the original timeline, I think it'd be really unfortunate to see even less services available for those students, and for families not to be able to know that they'd be able to use those daycare providers and that they'd have a spot on our campuses. So I would just put that out there. Other board questions or comments?
I guess my quick last comment for those that are listening is that we might have had to slow our roll a little bit, but we are still working every single day to get those kids that need it the most back as soon as it's safe and possible. Because they seem to think we're just not thinking about it till we have a board meeting.
So, hey.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I think, all the discussion and, I think I like the idea of maybe CARES going ahead and doing a survey just to have that data that might be helpful. But also, to really focus in on, what we've talked about, any kind of student that needs something extra right now or needs additional support in all those categories, but some that we wouldn't necessarily identify, but, would self-identify and come in to get some extra help, I think is a good place to start whenever we can make that happen. So.
And so I would just add in, so, I made the comment, I guess at this point, several weeks, if not a while back, a few weeks back, that I thought there was a distinct possibility that the majority of our students would spend the rest of the year in distance learning. And I think that would be very unfortunate. It is not what I hope. But I think as we continue to navigate through this, that people more and more see why that is a possibility. Two of the things that we've stated that in order for us to reopen, one, it was contingent upon what was happening with COVID in our community as reflected by county and state guidelines. And now, we've moved from the orange tier all the way back to purple. And so that certainly has an impact, as well as our ability to reach agreements with our negotiating units. And so, as much as people can say, well, you just tell them they have to go back, the reality is we have to have our bargaining partners sign off on this. And I know those conversations are ongoing. I do hope that, while maintaining the safety of our students and staff, that we are able to reach agreements with our bargaining units and that they honor the will of their employees who do want to go back. So this isn't about forcing people back into the classroom, but rather to help us with, I agree with, I think just about every board member has talked about those students that we've identified as really struggling with distance learning and giving great importance to trying to help them and provide support. And we have employees who want to do that. And I hope we can reach negotiating agreements that would allow that to happen as quickly as possible. And at the same time, continuing to plan for the hybrid reopening. And it's certainly discouraging. I was hoping not to be sitting here with us being in purple, but rather for us to be talking more about what reopening was going to be looking like on January 11th. But I do want to give a little context, and I looked at the county numbers myself this morning, and over the past 30 days in our county of more than 1 million people, 3 people have died from COVID, and all 3 of those people were in long-term care facilities. And it is certainly tragic. Our hearts go out to them and to their families. But I think we need to balance and understand that, we want to be mindful of the numbers and things like that, but that is a fact. And so, for us to continue to look at how we can serve those students, the ones who, I think part of a job of a board member is to be an advocate for those who cannot speak for themselves. And right now we have some students and we have some families who are greatly suffering during this and would hugely benefit from being back in school. And we do have employees who want to be there with them. And I hope we can continue to try to make that happen as quickly as possible while keeping everyone as safe as possible and planning for a larger reopening. So, any other board comments or questions? Because we still have another agenda item.
Yep, and if I may, before we move to that other item, if I could just take a point of privilege for 1 minute.
Please.
So while there's still 188 people on the call, and before people start falling off, we wanted to present this to Trustee Durkee for her time as she served as president. So I have this here in the office. So this is Trustee Durkee. We are so appreciative of your commitment and your service on the board. And so we have this beautiful plaque. It definitely does not, it doesn't justify all that you've given, but it is just a small token of your appreciation, of our appreciation for the work that you've done for the board. So
great, thank you. I have to share with you. I thank you very much. I really appreciate that particular one, because somewhere in this office I'm still trying to put together. I came across one that looks a lot like that for my dad. My dad had he was an engineer and he was the president of something at some point. So I just happened to find it and I kept it. So we have matching ones now, even though he's long gone. But so anyway, that's a great choice. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And not to be outdone, and I know in the spirit of one size fits all, but I also have one for Brian Lawrence for your time serving as president, and again, I just appreciate just all the all the guidance and just leadership that you've had. I was trying to figure out how many years you've been on the board, and you kind of threw out your kid was like in elementary and now he's in high school now, and I couldn't keep up with the math, and so anyway. I'm sure it's been a lot of years. I'm sure you had hair before you joined the board.
I did.
So,
I don't no, thank you. I looked like Fabio when I joined just flowing locks when I joined the board 8 years ago. So thank you for that. And I'm sure
I do just want to make a plug for L&J Engraving in Concord. Oh yeah, well, I'm just going to make a plug for Ellen J. Engraving in Concord. She's an ex employee, and daughter was an employee, and grandkids are students of the district. So again, Ellen J. Engraving in Concord. I know, shameless plug, but
It
what
looks,
are you gonna do?
it looks wonderful, and right now, holiday season coming up, shop local as much as possible. So for those loved ones who you want to get engraved, I'm sure just about anything.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
It is greatly appreciated, and I'm sure people will reflect on Ms. Durkee's year as president versus mine, and acknowledge hers was much smoother. So.
You had a much heavier lift, so for sure. So.
Well, thank you. That is greatly appreciated, Dr. Clark. And so with
So
that,
again, we're down to 175. We're down to 175 viewers. So I thought I better get that quick.
Well, thank you. It's appreciated. So we have
President Lawrence. I thought that incoming trustee McFerrin had unmuted at some point. Maybe was about to speak before we move to the next topic.
By all means.
I thought about some questions because I was thinking, because I'm a teacher in Acalanes, and so we've been talking about reopening plans. And there's a lot of anxiety from a lot of parties about it. I think especially now that we've moved back into the purple tier. I noticed that you said the binding survey is going to be put off, but didn't mention kind of the date. And I know it doesn't seem like we have MOUs in place. So I was just kind of curious, like, with an updated timeline, like what are some of the things that you're kind of hoping to have in place that are going to inform, a new timeline, or are we going to have a new timeline?
Great, and thank you, and again, welcome, and and thank you again for that question. So one thing, it's not necessarily a survey. What it is, it's a declaration. And so, like our neighbors in San Ramon, they just went through this process, and what basically is happening in some other districts, but this is not what we're proposing, is when you have some kids coming back and some kids remaining in distance learning, you have to change their teachers, you have to change their classes. And so within this declaration, you have to basically sign an agreement that you're going to do that. But also, and the reason why I'm so glad you brought this up is because a lot of the concerns that many of our labor partners have brought up, or some of the public comments that you've heard from employees, is the what ifs. What if the student does this? What if a family does this? What if this happens? All that is included in this declaration. So it says that you will do screenings every morning before you come to school, that masks are mandatory. And if you don't wear a mask, you're not going to be able to return until you are capable, until you're willing to wear a mask. If you are sick, then who is going to come and pick you up, and in what time frame is that going to happen if you're called? And so those are things that would need to be included in the declaration. And because we are not changing classes, and that's not taking place, our turnaround time for creating a group and a B group would only take us a week or so compared to a month. And so that's why originally we were looking at collecting these declarations this week to give us time to prepare for January. But because of the new proposed sample schedule, and with us moving back into purple, we're looking at the next board meeting that we have, which I believe is December 14th. And if we're going to make a recommendation on the 14th to continue on with our target date of the 11th, then we'll announce it at that meeting. And if we need the declarations, then we'll send it out at the conclusion of that meeting. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
Did I miss a key point?
No, I just wanted to make sure that it seems like that January 11th date is like kind of not an official, we're going back date. It seems like things are kind of still in motion and developing. Well,
things are always things. I mean, I think if as I shared earlier, this whole thing is fluid. But I think that it's important that we set goals, and and then we have checks and balances along the way. I know our public comments. If you just listen to our public comments, you you're going to get one view. But if you read the the myriad emails that I get, I'm going to speak for myself, that I get from parents who want to have their kids back, not because, and the amazing thing is, it's not because they need to go back to work, or not because they don't want to teach their kid, or not because they need a break. It's because they are in crisis mode and they're saying, I'm losing my kid and I'm desperate and I need this help. And so again, I'm always going to advocate for kids, and and if there's kids out there that are desperate, and these are the words of the families, my kid is desperate and they need help, then I think it's important that we keep that target, but then we're able to adjust along the way. So, I mean, even if we had a signed MOU tomorrow, I wouldn't propose opening in November like some of our neighbors were proposing and things of that nature. We would still push it out to January.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other trustee comments or questions on the reopening? All right. With that, we're going to move along to 4.1, which is informational presentation on Holbrook Language Academy's TK through 7th grade program and possible expansion to grade 8 for the 2021-22 school year. Dr. Clark?
Yes, so I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Sachs and her team, but I just, and they're going to say this over and over, but I'm going to just start it off and say we are talking about Holbrook, but we're also talking about all of our, all of our dual language programs as well. So don't feel left out if if you're in a dual language program and you're not a student at Holbrook. So there's going to be enough information to go around. So Ms. Sachs, I'll turn it over to your glorious team there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you everyone for allowing us this time this evening. Before we get started and we have our presentation shown on the screen, I just wanted to recognize, or maybe not, here we go, Director Carmen Garces, who oversees our English learner in our dual language program, Assistant Director Maria Candelaria Perez Barreto, and she also works with the English learner dual language program, and Principal of Holbrook, Marga Marshall. And they're going to be helping present this evening. So thank you very much for the time. The Holbrook Language Academy is a program that actually began and reopened in 2017-18. We've come to the board a couple different times in order to give updates. It was closed 2010, 2011, and then it was opened as a Holbrook Language Academy. So all of the students there, the hope is that they all will be bilingual and biliterate once they leave the program. Next slide, please. This is a very appropriate slide. We've got two board members. We have a student board member also that have not heard maybe about the Holbrook Language Academy. But to Dr. Clark's point, we actually have dual language programs across our district. And just to kind of give you an understanding, Bel Air, Cambridge, Meta Homes, and Shore Acres, as well as Ignatia Valley Elementary, all offer dual language programs. Bancroft and Holbrook Language Academy are two-way dual language programs. And also, not to be outdone, we actually have accelerated Spanish language arts program at several middle schools, and that is something new over the past several years. Oak Grove has 2 sections in 6th grade and 1 section in 7th grade of accelerated Spanish language arts. Riverview has 2 sections, 1 in 7th grade and 1 in 6th grade. And then Foothill Middle School also has accelerated Spanish. So this is something that's not only at the elementary level, but it's grown into our middle school. And we're quite excited about that and very happy to be able to offer this in a variety of different schools across our district. This presentation, though, for tonight is really revisiting the Holbrook Language Academy and our desire to have it TK, which is transitional kindergarten, all the way up through 8th grade. So we wanted to provide you a brief update on what's happening, not only with the elementary program, but also the 6th and 7th grade programs, in hopes that as we go to the end of the presentation, that we will, in hopes, bring this back to the board for a decision at our December board meeting. And so with that, I'd like to hand over the presentation to Principal Marshall, who is going to describe a bit about the Holbrook Language Academy. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. Thank you. Good evening, board members, Dr. Clark, new trustees elected, Ms. Michelle Alas. As Ms. Sachs just said, I'm the proud principal at Holbrook Language Academy. And yes, we reopened as a Language and Culture Academy in 2017. And we reopened with 175 students. And we are now up to 396. As in today. So it's amazing how the program has been growing up. So in this slide, I'm just sharing the classes that we have in the two-way dual immersions and also the classes that we have in the monolingual classes. We have 1 TK, 3 kinder, 3 first grade, 3 second, 2 third, 1 6th, and 1 7th classes in the two-way dual immersion classes. And then we have 1 monolingual class, 1 in 3rd, 1 in 4th, 1 in 5th grade. And those are the classes that are fading out as the two-way dual immersion program grows. Next slide. I wanted to show the board and everybody checking this out, just the demographics of student population. There is an intra-transfer that families that would like their students to be here, they need to put in. So that makes our school very diverse. We do have, let me point out the English learners. We have 20.45% of English learners. We actually have a non-negotiable block, which is called language learning block, where our English learner students receive those services. And then the Spanish-speaking students do have also Spanish language development during that time. Some of the demographics here, we have, Filipino, Hispanic, 57.7%, 2 or more races. So we are a very diverse school, and we're happy that parents from all over are trusting our school. Next slide. And the best is just the languages that we spoke at Hola, because that's the best, right? Holbrook Language Academy. We have so many different languages, and we invite our families to join us. Well, during distance learning, we can't do it, but when we're face-to-face, we do our weekly morning announcements, and we invite a student or a parent or a grandpa or anybody from the community that speaks a different language. And then we do our morning announcements with some of these languages for the rest of the students to kind of listen and hear, so far we've learned numbers in Tagalog, or the days of the week in Portuguese, or, colors in Czech language. So we do welcome every single language. Next. This is just a little picture of some of our classroom environment. We do, our vision is to provide that opportunity to learn in that bilingual and multicultural environment. And at the same time, we have that, that classroom environment that promote understanding of all cultures. So that's kind of a picture of some of our classrooms environments. Next, please. And now I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Dual Language and EL Department, Ms. Carmen Garces.
Hello. Mount Diablo Unified School District has dual language programs in 7 schools. As Mrs. Sachs mentioned, I want you to think about dual language schools as an umbrella, okay? Dual language means learning in 2 languages. And under that umbrella, we have 1-way dual immersion and 2-way dual immersion. For example, Meadow Homes is a 1-way dual immersion because all the students in the class speak Spanish as a primary language. However, at Bancroft and at Holbrook, they are considered 2-way dual immersion because the composition of the class have students that are Spanish speakers and students that are English only, okay? In a dual language program, students are able to keep their native language while acquiring a second, and this is especially helpful for English learners because in many cases, when English learners go into an English-only program, they lose their skills in the primary language. English-speaking students best acquire a second language when they are in contact with primary language speakers of the target language. And Spanish-speaking students best acquire a second language when their first language is well established. In our dual language programs, all students are expected to demonstrate mastery of the English language arts standards as well as the Common Core standards and the Spanish standards, and these are measured by the assessments that we have in English and in the target language, which in this case is Spanish. Additionally, English learners are expected to demonstrate mastery of English language development standards and reclassified as fluent English proficient. That means competent in the use of English. Next slide, please. I just want to remind you and inform also as well inform our new trustees that our dual language programs are based on research, okay? And these are the 3 principles that are the base of our dual language programs. And you can find these principles in a book that it's called Principles of Dual Language Education that was printed by the Center for Applied Linguistics, which they are accepted universally as the principles of dual language programs. The first principle is bilingualism and biliteracy. And when we talk about that, we are referring at the ability to speak, read, write, and understand both languages. When we talk about the second principle, which is grade level academic achievement, we are talking that the student will be successful in their subject matters in English and in the target language. And the last pillar, which is the cross-cultural competency, refers to the ability to adapt effectively across cultural environments, or the ability that our students will have to understand, communicate, and effectively interact with members of different cultures. Okay? Next slide. And this is kind of like the history of the different times that we have come to the board or that we have met with members of the community and different groups in order to discuss Holbrook. Mount Diablo has been pioneer in dual language programs or bilingual programs. We have had them for many, many years, and we have had different models, okay? However, in 2013, Mount Diablo published their master plan for English learners, and there they committed again to dual language instruction, to a 50-50 model that would be implemented all through the district, okay? In 2014-15, Bancroft open as a two-way dual immersion. Between 2015 and 17, there were community discussions on opening Holbrook as a dual language site. And in 2017, Holbrook Language Academy opens with a two-way dual language program. And at the same time, we start discussing the how we were going to move our students that they were at the elementary level into a dual language middle school, because our master plan called for that continuity. We came to the board in different occasions to make presentations, to do informations about the programs for English learners, dual language programs, and also Holbrook. In 2019-20, we had community meetings in order to recruit parents for enroll their children in 6th grade for Holbrook. And we did a board presentation on May of 2020 to move forward with Holbrook Middle School. So we had 6th grade, we needed to move to 7th grade. And now we are currently, this month, we have been working on the recruitment for the new 6th grade class that would be coming to Holbrook next year. Ms. Marshall?
Next slide, please. This is a little update on our 6th and 7th grade transfers. On 2019-20, students transfer to 6th grade from some of the dual developmental bilingual schools from Bel Air, Cambridge, Meadow Homes, and Ignacio Valley. It is a small cohort of students, but they are strong, and these students are doing just awesome. And in this school year, we are honored to have students from every single of the dual language schools that have 5th graders in the bilingual programs. Those are Bancroft students, Bel Air, Cambridge, Meadow Homes, Shore Acres, and Ignacio Valley. So it's been just great knowing that, especially the parents have shared that it is great that there is one place where their students can continue their middle school education in a bilingual program. And we offer 50-50. We continue the 50-50 program that the students in elementary schools were used to, with 2 languages a day, right? They're exposed to both English and Spanish every single day when face-to-face. I just wanted to show pictures, do everything right. So this is a picture of our 6th grade teacher, Maestra Beltrán Palau, and our 7th grade teacher, Mr. Postigo Matao. Next slide, please. This is a sample schedule for students in 6th grade and the subjects and the languages. So being a 50-50, students receive, they are subjects with an assigned language to that. So students have English language arts in English and Spanish language arts in Spanish. But then they do receive math in both English and Spanish. Science is done in English. Oral history or history is done in Spanish, and then PE is done in English as well. And these students, following a 50-50 model, they also have, well, they were currently being provided to teachers, and they actually have music this school year as well. And then the students also visit the library when face-to-face. Next one. This is a sample schedule for students in 6th grade when they are face-to-face, and it's kind of a typical day in a 6th grade dual language. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, Each subject has an assigned language. And then we had both in both the years, last school year and this year, only one class on 6th grade. So those are self-contained. That means one teacher, one bilingual teacher, and the teacher switches languages or teaches both languages to students. So as you can see in this schedule, students start the day in English in this schedule, right? They start in English, they go to lunch, and then when they come back, the students end up their day with Spanish. The following day, they start the day in Spanish, they go to lunch, and they end up the day in English. So that is following the 50-50 model where the students are having both languages every day. And then with that, I'm going to go to the next slide, and I believe that will be Mrs. Sachs.
Recommendations such as turn on your mic as we go into the future. We're going to continue with community outreach and informational meetings on the middle school program. I think it's important to note that we've got a rising set of dual language students at Bancroft. And so they are going to be looking for a home, and they're very interested right now submitting their transfer requests and everything in order to explore different options for two-way dual immersion programs. So that is something that we want to make sure that we provide them all the information that they need to make an informed decision. Professional development is huge on dual language, and how do we make sure that our students are bicultural, biliteral, and some of them come from actually many more cultures than just English and Spanish. So ensuring that our teachers and staff are very well trained, that we've got the supplies and the curriculum necessary. We continue to have discussions with our union partners to ensure that any work impact is something that we have thought through. So we are in the process of finalizing, some answers to some questions that they have and moving forward with discussions with them. There are, often budget impacts when we're opening up new classrooms. To Principal Marshall's credit, she has built into her single plan, and actually it's a credit to the community. Their plan is really quite targeted towards ensuring that the resources go to ensure that there's a balance, a 50-50 balance of the support needed for the English program as well as the Spanish program, because it's all very much one family and one integrated program over there at OLA. So the new technology is something being looked at, any type of curriculum and materials that are necessary. Of course, if they're board adopted or they need to be so, that is something that the Ed Services team supports. And we will actually be bringing some of that information to the board most likely after the first of the year. And really what we're hoping to do is when we come back in December is to bring to you a recommendation to approve a TK-8 grade dual language program at Holbrook Language Academy. Each year as we go into the transfer season, there's always a point of just very much nervousness with many of our community members. Is this really going to happen? They've got a lot of eggs in this basket of really wanting to be at Holbrook Language Academy for TK all the way up, hopefully through 8th grade. So we're hoping to get, to be able to move forward with that in a very thoughtful way, and that will take board direction. And so that will also allow us to start working with our families, especially the ones that have already submitted their transfer papers. Super interested in continuing on with the Holbrook two-way dual language experience. And so that being said, next slide. That is the end of our presentation, but if you would like to know more about the Language Academy, Monica Marshall has done a great job and their staff in creating all different ways you can learn about the program and to communicate back and forth. And I do want to thank everybody for your attention and to the board members for hearing our presentation this evening and allowing us the time.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Board questions, board comments?
Question.
Yes, Ms. Durkee.
I have a question and a comment. So how many students, I have two questions. How many students are in the 6th grade class and the 7th grade class this year?
Go ahead, Principal Marcel.
So we do have in 7th grade, the same small cohort that we started last year. There's 12 students. And then we do have 24 students this year in 6th grade.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And are you able, this might be too hard to do right now, but I appreciate the slide that talked about, the various schools the students are coming from. Knowing that one of the things I'm trying to get a handle on is, how much of it is coming from that immediate community. Are you able to give me some sense of, how many students, I guess first in the 6th and 7th grade, but then, maybe I think that might be a smaller percentage than in the TK through 3rd grade that are from that community, that this would be their school of attendance anyway. Do you have any sense of that?
So for intra-transfers, was that your question?
Yeah, so it's 2 questions. Sorry, I didn't share that very well, but I'm trying to get a sense of, I'm making an assumption. Well, I shouldn't make an assumption. So of the 24 and the 12 that you just talked about, I kind of remember that the 12, I think majority were not from the Holbrook community, right? They were coming from where schools where they were already having this dual language experience and they wanted to continue, but they weren't from the Holbrook community. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then the 24 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, or
they're all from the 6 other dual language schools, because our students in the 2-way dual immersion program at Holbrook are right now only in 3rd grade.
Right. Yeah, I remember we had that conversation.
So
I'm trying to. I need to say that I have a recent board meeting just helped amplify this for me. I am so proud of Mount Diablo Unified School District's dual immersion, dual language, this whole umbrella that Carmen talks about. I think, we should be very proud. I am very proud. And, I think much to Ms. Garza's leadership and her knowledge and tenacity, I think it's been a long time, right? It's been worked on. And I remember when I was working, we all got this book of what it's supposed to look like. And, we were all kind of, my sense was we were still very much learning, but it's come such a long ways, and I am very proud of what Mount Diablo does around this. And I guess I'm just still trying to understand Holbrook, and those of you that, again, I'm trying to make sure you don't take my plaque back.
If I may say something, that compliment goes to all the dedicated teachers,
yes,
that work in the dual program, and the magnificent principals that we have.
Right. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm looking at your little face, Carmen. So you're the one that spoke up a couple board meetings ago, and I will be forever indebted to you because I think you provide such great leadership. But absolutely, it's always a team effort.
But I just want to let you know that Mount Diablo committed in 2013 to restart our dual language programs.
Right.
Because for a little while, we have leadership that was not supported of dual language programs. So when we restarted after the master plan, we said we are gonna do 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
So the schools in Bay Point and Concord, okay, they started a year ahead than Bancroft,
right,
and several years before than Holbrook. So we needed to have an avenue for those students to continue with their dual language program, because we have discussed the research that the longer that they are, the
right,
greater that it's the benefit.
right. Yeah.
That's why the first year, and this year either, and probably in 2 more years, the kids are coming from all the other dual language programs, not from Holbrook. When Holbrook is in 5th grade, then those kids that they want will go into the dual language program, and we hope that they all will want, because Holbrook is such a nice program. You know, so I know that it's difficult to understand, well, why is it at Holbrook if there's no kids? It's that we needed a place to start. And it was decided that that was the school that had a space. You know, if you ask me, my preference would be to have another one in Bay Point, you know, but we don't want to complicate more things.
Okay, so she's reading my mind tonight. So, let's see. So I understand what you're saying, and I think the challenge was, you know, the as you well know, you know, in terms of the board's awareness and understanding and, you know, decision making about deciding that this particular, I mean, truthfully, every year that goes by, we get more and more invested. So, you know, and I know it's a wonderful school and I know it's playing a big role in the community. I do hear that, you know, and I think maintaining that integrity that it's some, you know, serves that community well is important. So to your point that when the students that are moving up to where they're ready for middle school, that will get reinforced even more. So anyway, I think I'll just leave it at that, and
it's not
let you guys do after tonight, you know. Go ahead.
And it's not too far in the future, actually. I mean, as we're looking at the chart, we're talking 2023 and we're all looking at 2021. So it's coming up pretty fast on us that we're we're estimating, and we may have actually up to four sixth grade classrooms coming. So it's coming.
It's coming. I understand that. Yeah, I think, you know, the issue originally was, and just what Carmen's trying to address, is that the decision to move into middle school before the kids at Holbrook were ready for middle school was a little kind of throwing me, I won't speak for the rest of the board, a little bit. Yes, I knew that was an idea for that school, but I didn't expect it to happen before those kids reached be of that age. And then it opens the question of, was that? I don't know if an assessment done broader by the board or by staff that was the best location for it, because you always want to, you know, make sure you're making good decisions that way. So I think those things will all become moot points going forward. But I did truly want to say that I am, you know, very proud of Mount Diablo's dual immersion and what we're doing in this area, because I think we're on the map for it. And I just want to thank everybody for that.
Other board questions or comments?
Yeah, I had a question to comment. First of all, hi, Principal Marshall. Hi. It was a pleasure working with Principal Marshall. Last spring, I had the honor of helping in one of the first grade classrooms. So those were Holbrook students through and through, the ones that are going to end up now in second grade, going to end up eventually in the sixth grade middle school program as well. And I got to see firsthand just for several months we were doing distance learning, just what an amazing job they're doing at Holbrook, how much the students are learning and becoming literate. I was very impressed by all the little 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. So I just wanted to say that. And I had a question in terms of, once again, the numbers that Trustee Durkee was talking about. The timeline is completely dependent on the fact that there are students transferring from these different programs, the 12 and 24 that you're mentioning. So I had the question of Ms. Sachs, who mentioned that there are families that have already submitted transfer papers, and that's them hoping that, we're going to expand to 8th grade without really knowing if, exactly. Do you have numbers of how many have already submitted transfer papers thus far?
Principal Marshall actually has updated numbers as of today. Yeah.
And they look great. So thank you, Ms. Michelle, for asking. We do have for 6th grade 2 for first choice, because when we are putting in a transfer, you can put the first and the second choice. For first choice, 22 students, and then for second choice, 8 students. But by looking at the transfers, there are 6 students that are not coming from dual language schools. So that will be something that, what we usually have is students coming from dual language schools, but we don't know if these students are coming from a different country and then they have already the proficiency in both languages. So that's something that our EL department, EL dual language department, will be checking into. So we could have up to 30 as you know. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Exciting.
Just to follow up on that, that was for 6th grade. Do you also have numbers of interest for 7th and 8th grade at this point?
We don't have any 7th grade intra transfers as in now, or 8th grade. Mm-hmm.
But you're expecting to keep the ones who are already there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Trustee Khan, it would be very difficult to get a student in 7th grade that can go into a dual language program because the student has to be able to handle content in both languages.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I guess my question was better reframed, as Trustee Lawrence said. Are you expecting to keep all of the current students?
Yeah, but when we have someone outside of the dual language program that wants to come, you know, my department tests the students and does a recommendation to see if the student can be successful or not.
Can I just add, I think it's important for that maybe our newer incoming board members and other people, because it was kind of an aha for me, is that this would be a TK through 8. It would not be called a middle school. That it's what you need to do in a middle school, right, is different than what you do in those grades that are part of TK 8. So that's just important awareness for people to have as well.
Correct, and this is actually our second K through 8 program in the district. The other one is actually our Sunrise school. And so it is considered a K-8 would be a self-contained setting. And so we do submit upgraded, CDE information in order to let them know that we have expanded beyond a typical elementary program to a K-8 elementary type of format. And so our students, as Principal Marshall said, are considered self-contained, and that has a lot to do with just the number of students. We don't have a whole cadre of teachers where our students are wandering around as they would on a normal middle school comprehensive campus. And so during a lot of the parent meetings, this is something that the parents are really talked to quite a bit. And this is why we know they're making such a solid commitment, is because they know it's not going to be in their mind's eye, oh, a middle school, this is what it's going to look like. No, they're really identifying that this is their top priority, is to have have their student be multilingual, multicultural, have that full experience, which is going to look different than if they went to their neighborhood middle school. So there's a lot of communication and discussion. So the parents that do commit, they're generally all in. And that's why I think there's a confidence in having those students continue in the program, because nothing's left, as a question. They really do understand that this is a very unique and a very special program.
Yeah, and I think it's just fantastic that we have this opportunity. It's the kind of thing, if you were a smaller district with a more singular population or similar population, then you wouldn't be able to provide the 50-50, of the 2 languages in every class. So it's fantastic that we've been able to create the opportunity. I know as a parent in the district, I was sad that my kids were already too old to join this school, but it's something I would have been interested in, because I think it's also that it's a couple of other things too, right? It's also the way of the future, our global economy, and for our students to be bilingual. Our English speaking students too need to be learning another language, right? To really be successful. And as well as looking at the integration of our schools, which, throughout, I think, the United States, when we have neighborhood schools, which are wonderful because you could walk to them and all of those benefits, because we have segregated neighborhoods, we end up with segregated schools. And so having some other opportunities for our students to be able to mix and experience different cultures is really I think something that a lot of parents are looking for their students and the way of the future. So I think this program is only going to continue to grow.
I'm curious. Can I go next?
Please.
That last point around integration, I also like to be careful because most integration is making children of color have to leave their neighborhood to go to another school. And so that's just one point, is that I don't want to do that in general. It has nothing to do with this, but just in general, when we're talking about school integration, that it shouldn't always fall on the backs of families of color to integrate a white school. My question is, like, the class size of, I already forgot it now, gosh, 14 and 24, the new, whatever, you know what I'm talking about. I'm curious how, like, that would be a dream for any, like, as a parent, that would be a dream class size for anyone. And I know that those are small at the moment, I assume, because you're building up the different grades. But I'm curious how that, how it looks at other, how that compares to our other dual immersion programs that weren't, what are their class sizes? And yeah.
That's a great question. And actually, we've been monitoring it very, very carefully because we actually have a very strong commitment not to have combo classes for our dual language programs. You can imagine having 2 grade levels plus 50-50 languages and all of this is just a recipe for burnout and for confusion and for just overwhelm. So we track those numbers quite carefully. And actually at our other school sites, it's actually a really good question. The numbers are fairly low. They actually are higher in the baby grades, so with the younger ones, and then actually there's just natural attrition as the students go through the program. So usually around 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, the numbers actually do settle, and they're quite lower than their English only counterparts. So sometimes there is a natural question about, well, what about these students versus that? Why don't you create combos for the dual language? So we do quite a bit of kind of education amongst staff, and teachers do understand when you're in there working with sometimes 2 sets of students, or you're at least doing 2 languages, you might be, doing both languages within one classroom. It is something that's a very unique setting. So the numbers at Holbrook, especially that 14 number, is actually quite low. But we do have some other sites that do have numbers around that same range. And some of them, again, with the younger grades are higher and more aligned with our English only classrooms.
Well, just to clarify, I think it was 24, the answer I got was 6th grade was 24 students. But 7th, which is, they're not adding to yet, was 12. And that's just because, so I don't think that's considered standard or anything like that. I didn't ask what the lower grades numbers were, but I think that's where the 12 and 24 came from.
I would just provide some context that when the board considered the expansion to 7th grade last year, that 1, we looked at it as an investment, and 2, we understood because we had not been offering this and the Holbrook students were not yet there, that these numbers would be lower. And I think we stated that this would not be sustainable in future years to have class sizes this small in all likelihood, but rather we were trying to lay the groundwork and provide certainty for those Holbrook students and allow for that expansion. But I think certainly the question is a good one, because I think I don't think it would be sustainable 4 years, 5 years from now to have 12 students in the 7th grade or 8th grade class, but I don't think that's the expectation.
And President Lawrence, just a sense of history on that. If I'm remembering correctly, there was the decision to launch the 6th grade quite late. And
Yes.
so we actually lost a lot of the transfers that originally were like, hey, we're in, and we kind of kept pulling them along. But because there was so much, confusion or questions, or how are we doing this and why are we doing it now? And it's a fact. It's not, it's just, that's kind of what happened. So the number is half of what the 6th grade group is. And we do definitely feel it's going to grow, especially if we take this step within this, our next board meeting, in hopes that we can confidently tell our community not to be concerned. We are moving forward to have the TK through 8 program, so then they can really make their plans and not sit there and feel like they need to have a foot in both camps. I need my neighborhood school. No, I might get Holbrook. No, I'm a neighborhood school. So I appreciate you sharing with that. It was never anybody's intention to have artificially tiny classrooms. It's more of the timing of it for sure.
And I think, if I recall, I think we're getting about a 2 or 3 month head start on it, because I think that decision was earlier this year. I think it was like in February, if I recall correctly.
It was a little bit late.
Yeah.
The first year when we were given the go-ahead, we were given the go-ahead in April. So it was tremendous. We were able to recruit like 20 parents, but over the summer break, we lost some parents. But last year, Ms. Marshall did an excellent recruitment, and we did multiple presentations, and we were able to recruit one class. And this year, we have done 2 presentations, and we will continue recruiting and letting the community know that they have this option. Now, we have many parents that they want to attend, but they cannot attend for lack of transportation, And so we could have more students if we would provide transportation, but the district does not do that for any of their programs.
I think I should clarify, my question wasn't out of concern of low enrollment, because I understand that it's a program that's building grade by grade. I was just curious how the class sizes of even, let's say you're at full enrollment, would compare to the other dual language programs, dual immersion programs in the district. Would, as this is clearly a highly COVIDed school, there are other programs at less highly COVIDed schools, and that feedback I've heard have much more crowded classrooms that we're all used to, that, my daughter's, I don't know what class, name a class, there's 38, 40 kids. I don't know if there's 40, but there's 30 way over 5 kids. And so I'm just curious of how it compares and how and if we'll reach equity in that classroom size across programs, whether or not the school is COVIDed, even though the programs are COVIDed. And as I heard at the beginning, before you presented, Dr. Clark explained, although we're hearing from Holbrook, this is like an explanation of all of our, the excellency of all of our dual language immersion programs. So that's where my question is coming from.
Yeah, we only have one middle school. We have 7 dual language programs, but only Holbrook has the middle school going on. For the students that they don't go into Holbrook, to continue in the 50-50, as Mrs. Sachs mentioned, we have the pathway of continue their high level of biliteracy through an advanced Spanish class that we offer at Oak Grove, Rio Vista, and Foothill. And that advanced Spanish class is only for the students coming out of dual language programs. In a middle school, children don't select a language as an elective as a 7th grade. They can do a little bit of a language as part of a wheel or a rotation. So we recognize that we wanted to support the students that they were not gonna go to Holbrook, continue their Spanish language development.
Thank you. Other board questions or comments?
I was this is just for my own knowledge. So you mentioned how I'm curious about like the makeup of the classes themselves, because you mentioned how like in those middle grades, I believe second, third, and fourth, they have several classes, and you have 24% English language learners. Are they concentrated in a particular grade level, scattered throughout, I'm assuming? And so yeah, they're since it's two-way dual immersion. When I was, my parents would have signed me up for Holbrook if I was in preschool. I was an English learner, so my parents would have signed me up immediately if it had existed. So I was just wondering, just confirming, English learners are like scattered throughout the classes. Since it's two-way dual immersion, it's they receive the same.
We do balance the classes, and we try to, we look at the number of students, and then we see how many English learners, how many Spanish speaking, and how many bilingual. And then we make up the classes just by that, trying to follow the EL master plan, where it goes for a third of each, third of English learners, third of Spanish, and third of bilingual. So the classes are like balanced.
Great. All right. Thank you, Principal Marshall.
Any other, please, Ms. Mayo.
Thank you. I want to thank you for bringing this presentation to the board earlier this year than in previous times when it was a struggle when we had so many questions. And I know that I have been challenged you with very many questions. I do support the dual language program, and I am excited to see the success that's happening. So I hope that everyone understands that piece of it. My preference initially, and I've been vocal about this, was that we would have selected a middle school so that the program could expand grandly, and not that it won't be a grand expansion at Holbrook. And I understand the parents' desire to keep their children in a smaller, closer knit community. So, there's pro and con there. My oldest daughter was the first 6th grader to matriculate to middle school, because when she was in 4th grade, our elementary schools were K-6. And so, we had the whole parent angst about moving to middle school. So I understand that piece, and I'm sure that parents are pleased that their students will be able to go K-8 in this program. My concern was, I recall when we were developing and promoting and gathering community interest from the Holbrook community, was that it was to establish a community school that would offer both the dual language program and the monolingual program. And so I guess I'm feeling like Dr. Clark said a moment ago about those families who will not have an elementary school in their neighborhood if they don't select the Holbrook dual language program as their preference. So you indicated that 3rd, 4th, and 5th have an English program now, a monolingual class. I don't know what the numbers of those classes are at this point in time, and you indicated that they're fading or sunsetting them out. So that tells me, this is the first time I'm aware of that students from TK to 2 are no longer being enrolled in a monolingual program, or they're being told to enroll at another neighborhood school. Is that the case, or how is that? How is interest handled when a family comes to Holbrook without knowing that it's a dual language school?
I thought that actually our magnet schools, all 3, were combined together in a region so that you could choose any of the 3 as your neighborhood school. So I didn't think it was just that Holbrook had its own feeder pattern by itself anymore. Am I missing something there?
So just for a point of history, and then I'll let Principal Marshall kind of share a little bit. When Holbrook opened, it was at the same time where we actually established the Wren Arts Academy, which is very near, as well as the STEM, which is the Sun Terrace STEM Academy. So we have these 3 schools in a fairly close proximity to one another. So we knew that we could serve a variety of needs. with Ola being a very targeted language academy that was going to be transitioning into a two-way dual immersion academy, TK through hopefully 8th grade. But then for the English speaking families that this was not there, they always have a choice. The family could have a choice, and absolutely, but if they only wanted an English only program, they could then look to Wren, or they could also look to Sunterras that would have space available, so that we were not going to have a situation where there would not be room for the student. And so, Principal Marshall, was there anything else as families' question that you'd like to clarify on that front?
Yeah, that's perfectly perfect. Yeah, in 2017, we reopened, and we were reopened as part of the regional magnet with Sunterras and Wren, and we've been called the sister school. So yes, parents that choose the language in the program, they choose Holbrook. Parents that they feel that their students are going to do better in a STEM focused hands-on, they choose to go to Sunterras, which is another excellent school, and it offers an amazing program. And there are also parents that are saying, I don't know if my kid is going to do well in a two-way program. So, but I think my kid is a lot more artistic, and I think my kid is going to succeed better in the performing arts. And then they choose to go to Wren. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I'm still going to lament the fact that, the promise that I understood was made to that immediate Holbrook community was there would always be an monolingual program available at Holbrook campus, and that's not going to be. We change our attendance boundaries, and it is what it is. But I came away with a different perception. So that's, the error on my part. And I'm presuming that these 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade families understand that they don't have the same opportunity to participate in 7th and 8th grade that the dual language program does. And that was a question that I asked last year, was what was the plan for those students? So the answer is they have to choose a middle school for their attendance, and which is probably El Dorado.
And Valley View. Wait, is that the one?
Well, some went to Valley View, some went to El Dorado, and some went to Oak Grove. Mm-hmm. So, okay. All right. So thank you. Those were my questions.
All right, well, we appreciate your attention this evening and your support of the program and the support across all of our districts dual language programs, because it's definitely made a difference as we've looked to expand into many different middle schools, whether or not accelerated Spanish or the Holbrook TKA program. It's really something to be proud of. So we really appreciate your support.
I'll just quickly echo our other trustees in that I do think that our dual language immersion is a shining gem that MDUSD can be very proud of. I think that it's been exciting to see how it's grown from 2013 to now. And I think we're still just scratching the surface, because I know there's much more to come. So a great deal of thanks to everyone who's been involved and done so much to build the program. So thank you.
I just want to mention something. This is the last thing. I'm delighted that you feel proud of our program, and you should, because there are not that many districts in Northern California that they have the amount of programs that we have been able to support. And I want you to know that we are recognized as doing something that is innovative and reaches for excellence. And we are always getting questions, how do you do this? So we are looked upon as an example. Thank you.
Yep. So I recognize that some people don't want this meeting to end because it's Joanne and my last meeting, but we're going to go ahead. I think we'll wrap it up, and I'll just say.
Are you sure of that, Brian? There's no more extra meetings coming up between now.
We're going to do our We're going to do our darndest to not call any special or emergency meetings. So
I
let's
just need to know.
But it's 2020, but let's cross our fingers. And I'll just end it with, it's been an honor to serve. And I just have a great deal of gratitude for everyone. And I welcome our new board members and wish you all the success in the world and keep up the great work that's happening. And thank you so much to everyone who is working on behalf of the students in MDUSD. So with that, I think we're signing off and we're adjourned. So thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Buenas noches. Los vemos el jueves para la junta. No se escucha nada. No te puedo escuchar.
Oh, nos vemos, Mario.
Sí, claro.
Chao.
Chao, hasta
Bye.
luego. Buenas noches. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.